gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes sir. Then again I'm falling. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes sir. Then again I'm falling. Let Jesus work it out. Please, your Father, would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Please, your Father, would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Please, your Father, would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Oh, work it out. You work it out for mother.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and it feels good to be back. For those of you who don't know, I have been traveling the Mountain West, literally through the Rockies. I wouldn't say all of the Mountain West, but everywhere through the Rockies between Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the great experience we had and the conference Montanica, or otherwise known as Montanica. But we're also going to be getting into a Logos news stream. So this is the first stream back. I think it's been 15 days since I've been able to do a live stream. Pretty long for me. So I'm excited to be back. I always say, I feel like I'm back in the captain's chair because I do all my research and everything here. So when I'm back at my desk, it feels like I can actually get some work done. But we got a lot to get into, really, and I can't cover everything that was going on. I'll tell you, while I was traveling, I hardly even looked at news. One, I hardly even had reception. We'll talk a little bit about Jenny and I's trip, but I was basically disconnected from the news for roughly 10 days or so once I got to Montana, Butte, where Montanica or Montanica takes place there at Holy Trinity. I kind of caught up on a little bit on X. So today we're going to be focusing on what I feel like are the big stories, some of which a little bit overlaps with my absence. We're going to be talking about, at least today, Tulsi Gabbard going public with classified files regarding biolabs in 30 different countries that the U.S. government claimed that they didn't have. Not a huge thing. Obviously, we already knew about this, especially the biolabs in Ukraine, something that Putin actually mentioned back in 2022 when the war kicked off, talking about how the U.S. had all these biolabs and they were having these experimental viruses a la COVID-19. Well, now we know that that's a fact. Most of us already believe that to be the case. Also, the big sort of pop cultural or just cultural news in America right now is the Karmelo Anthony sentencing. And we're not really going to get into the trial. One, I didn't feel like diving into all that stuff and trying to catch up. So, for those who don't know, Karmelo Anthony, an African-American kid at a track meet, ends up stabbing Austin Metcalf, who was underneath his school's tent during a track meet. Apparently there was some type of rain delay. And Karmelo Anthony then decided for some reason to go to an opponent team's tent, refused to leave. Apparently, according to the trial, was requested to leave 15 times before calling the people of the other high school bitches and pussies and then stabbing them Austin Metcalf in the heart and killing him. It was notorious that his family raised almost over $500,000, almost $1 million post this tragedy, and then they don't even show up to the kid's trial. I mean, really strange. And then you saw all the backlash. We have literally blacks slapping and smacking, looks like poor veterans, poor homeless people around the state. Very strange, the reaction. So we're going to be looking at a little bit of even the response by Jeff Metcalf, the father, who I thought it was pretty interesting because he kind of lets loose. I don't know. Yeah, Watermelon Texas Nevsky knows what I'm talking about. That is exactly what he said. But, man, the family of Karmelo Anthony, kind of sickening. Just absolutely refused to take any responsibility. And maybe this is a cultural symptom, but it certainly piqued the entire interest of America. It seems like that's kind of the hottest topic. Now, we're also going to be getting into a handful of smaller stories, but the big stories that we're going to be focusing on today is one, this will come a little bit later, is have you been following what's going on in Albania? Now, Albania, ask the Europeans, has a bit of a negative stereotype amongst Europeans. And we've even kind of poked fun in our recent streams regarding Kosovo and some of the history of Serbia. Obviously, Serbia being an Orthodox nation, we tend to have a little bit more fondness for. But we got to give credit where credit is due. And Albania stood up in resistance to Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. We're going to be watching a little bit of clips concerning this. If you weren't aware, Ivanka and Jared were on Rothschild yacht in the Mediterranean and supposedly found an island. They didn't find an island. It's an undeveloped island right next to a natural ecosystem that is one of the largest, from what I was reading, one of the largest protective wildlife areas for flamingos. And then they decided to build a billionaire luxury island just for the elite, right? This is not for the Albanians. And decided to also build an airport, which would make it convenient for all the billionaires coming to their newfound island that they found. Of course, they didn't find it. It's been part of Albania for a very long time. Everybody knows about it, but nobody lives on it. So they decided to build an airport right next to this national protective wildlife area. And even the Germans who came to engineer the construction of this airport said, we really don't feel that comfortable with doing that because we're actually encroaching on this wildlife area. And out of ecological concerns, gave up on the project. Of course, that doesn't stop Ivanka and Jared. But what did stop Ivanka and Jared is Albanians burning the house of the former prime minister that agreed to this negotiation, protesting in the tens of thousands, going to the island of which Israelis were already beginning to settle for some strange reason, smashing their windows, pulling them out of their little trailers, and forcing the Israelis to leave, chanting, "Albania is not for sale." Israelis, essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, something about Israelis go away or go home. So God bless the Albanians. Thank you for standing in resistance to what we're seeing, a continuation of tragedies. About half of today's news stream is going to be what I found, just trying to catch up on everything regarding Israel. And we're going to see Mike Huckabee, U.S. ambassador to Israel, humiliating himself with more of his Zionist gospel, claiming that Christians owe a moral pledge to the Jews because of what they did in the Old Testament. We're also going to be looking at Benjamin Netanyahu essentially threatening Lebanon. Teba, one of the oldest Christian villages in the West Bank was destroyed by Israel in the past week. And so one of the commonalities in Israel's aggression for the last, I don't want to say, couple weeks, at least since I've left, seems to be a continual escalation against Christians, especially in southern Lebanon. We've talked about that territory south of the Litani River. So looks like business as usual for Israel, but the global sentiment in support of Israel is absolutely diminishing. So much so that Trump, it has now been confirmed, told Netanyahu that he's effing crazy and told him that everyone hates Israel, which is true, and that is causing people to hate him, which is true. But he's that ship's already pretty much sailed. You know, we've talked about how, Trump's been good on the southern border and a few domestic issues, but overall, the problem is that our government is held captive by Israel. And in the week that I was gone, this past week, the U.S. both rises the critical level of Israeli surveillance and espionage spying in the U.S. to its highest level, and at the same time, we have Congress trying to unite the IDF and the U.S. military. So, strange times to live in. The one side of the government saying Israel's our greatest threat regarding espionage and national secrets. On the other hand, we have the U.S. Congress trying to essentially fuse the Israeli military with the U.S. military. So, not great. So we're going to be picking up on all that stuff today. But before we even get into it, I want to kind of go over my trip to Montana. So that's going to be sort of the opening today. Major shout out to B. Sirach for gifting a Codal Crew membership. Thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate the support. I'll tell you what, it feels good to be back. It feels good to be back making content and chatting with you guys. Victor Ziegler throws in 30. Thank you so much, brother, for the generous support. He says, welcome back. What's the Orthodox view on jails? Seems that we could do so much more useful things with people in jail, especially in the U.S. Well, it's funny you bring that up. My parish, we're actually beginning a prison ministry. So if you're not familiar, the fastest growing faith in prison, now this is predominantly among African Americans, is Islam. And Islam actually has a very strong prison outreach. In regards to Christianity, I'm not sure who's sort of winning that battle, but I'm pretty sure and confident I could say that us Orthodox Christians could do a lot better. So what's the Orthodox view on jail? Well, they're necessary. They're necessary for society. They're necessary for retaining order in society. So I don't know if that's what you mean with the view on jails. I'm not against jails, especially with everything going on in the U.S. What I am against is liberal judges letting people out with violent crimes. Did you see the female African-American judge in Florida? I was reading something about this. Governor Ron DeSantis is asking her to essentially be reprimanded, lose her ability to be a judge, because she let out a convicted child rapist on a very low bond in which he was able to get out and then raped and killed another child. So, seems to be a habitual pattern with so many of the crimes that we've seen lately. But in regards to the Orthodox Christians doing prison ministry, I think that's great. I mean, we need to do outreach there. So I know my parish, shout out to Tim of my parish, St. Mary of Egypt. He's been working to try to put together a men's prison ministry. So good on them. I think we as Orthodox Christians can probably do more, absolutely do more for people in jail, as you say, especially in the U.S. Akathis says, we love, well, speak for yourself, brother. Speak for yourself. You know, the Israel thing actually has come up in my life personally. I've had a longtime supporter of mine, and what I believe to be a friend, just messaged me this week about how he can no longer support my work because my rhetoric about Israel has gone beyond the pale and is not indicative of the Christian values that he supports. So And I've always thought I've been kind of milquetoast because I always tell people, like regarding all the Jewish stuff, you can't hate an individual Jewish person, right? We're all, as Heidegger talked about, the thrownness of reality. We're all thrown into the world. You can't choose who your parents are. You can't choose what your ancestry is. You can't choose what culture you grow up in or what your first language is. So we have to separate, and this is really all you have to do is have a IQ above room temperature, is that you can differentiate individual people versus a collective movement and general patterns regarding that group of people or the interest of those groups of people, or especially a nation state like Israel. So we're going to be hitting Israel pretty hard today because I just don't know how one can be an Orthodox Christian and be supportive of what's going on in Israel in any fashion. I really don't even know how you can be a Christian, especially with the destruction of the farmland in Taba, one of the last remaining Christian villages in the West Bank, the destruction of, UNESCO churches and cathedrals in southern Lebanon, just annihilating entire communities. I watched a video today of southern Lebanon. I forget what area it was in, but it showed no building was remaining. Not a single home was still standing. Everything was destroyed. And from that perspective, I think we actually have a duty to speak out. I brought this up at Montanica, and I'll get into my trip just a minute, is that we have a duty to say what is true. And unfortunately, we are being conditioned through the TOS, through I can't tell you how many streams or videos I've had demonetized recently by YouTube, and the commonality is that they were critical of Israel or their involvement in the Iran war, and some of it was even me reading CNN news articles that was deemed to violate YouTube TOS, and so obviously I tried to. And I always say, this is not about hate towards any one group of people or an individual, but just stating factual things that are going on seems to be controversial nowadays. So we're not going to stop. I brought it up in my speech in Montanica, is that in a sense we're being conditioned like Pavlov's dogs. So my speech, well, I'll get into the whole trip, but my speech was generally, because Jenny and I had an amazing trip. We went to Grand Teton. For those of you not aware, the mountains there in Wyoming as you move into Yellowstone. Gorgeous, gorgeous place. Highly recommend. And then we went into Yellowstone for 2 days. And I planned on just presenting basically chapter 4 of my book, which is a comparison and contrast between essentially technological apotheosis and orthodox theosis. So looking at how one is natural, one is synthetic, essentially. But we were so moved by the experience that we had in Yellowstone. One, the proximity to animals. We saw bison. We saw 8 different bears, 2 grizzly bears, a black bear, and the rest were brown bears. We saw elk. We saw pronghorn. We saw a bald eagle. And one of the things that caused me to change my speech was we had this experience where Jenny and I, if anybody's been to Yellowstone, you know how people pull off to the side of the road whenever there's an animal that can be viewed. And so we're driving along, we see people begin to pull off to the side. So naturally, we do the same to see what's going on. And we end up witnessing a pronghorn antelope. This was corrected to me after my speech. I had a guy come up and said, "Hey, love your speech, but you got one thing wrong." And I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "You called them pronghorn deer. They're pronghorn antelope." So fair enough. Okay, thank you for that correction. So pronghorn antelope was about 100 yards away from Jenny and I. Of course, she's recording this. And as it's grazing, it's just coming closer and closer and closer until it's about 15 yards away. And then I pull her back. Don't want anything, dangerous to occur. And we get in the car, and she's recounting how magical this was, how close we were, the markings, how beautiful the animal was. It was a young male. And then we go around the corner in Lamar Valley. Lamar Valley is one of the big valleys there in Yellowstone. And we see cars lined up on the side of the road as far as the eye can see. And I'm thinking, what is this? There must be a grizzly bear fishing for salmon or something in one of the rivers. So we get out, and what we see is a pronghorn antelope and what appeared to be a baby antelope being chased and surrounded by 5 coyotes. Now, the 5 coyotes were able to corner the pronghorn up against 2 river systems there in Lamar Valley, and so they really had nowhere to go. And you can hear, so while we're sitting there, I'm talking about 1,000 people on the side of the road watching this, just everywhere. And I'm standing next to Jenny, we're watching it, and we're seeing the pronghorn run with the baby trying to avoid the coyotes. And eventually, we see that the coyotes have the pronghorn circled. The mother deer's or antelope's able to get out, but they end up getting the baby. And they, tackle the baby, get it down, kill it, begin to feast. And you can see almost the emotive element of the female pronghorn, the mother antelope. And she stands there, and then she begins running at the highest speed, as fast as she could, right over the top of the coyotes, trying to entice them to chase her and give up on the baby, which they don't take the bait. And she stands there, and I look around, and people are sobbing. People are crying. I even saw tears in my wife's eyes. And I'm looking at everyone, and so many people are watching this phenomenon through the screen, and they're sitting there. Oh my God. They're crying while they're watching it through their phone. And that's what caused me to change my speech. And the speech then became about how the church fathers speak of 2 books in which God reveals himself. Number 1, Scripture. Number 2, the book of creation. And how within Orthodox frontum, Orthodox perspective, watching that event occur, I didn't place blame on the coyotes. And I also, though I felt for the mother deer, was not moved to the level of tears because creation truly is a real lens to reality, a true understanding about life and death. And the fact, what made me so interested in this whole thing is that how many people do not contemplate death itself. And that if we lived more natural lives, if we weren't so conditioned in these comfort cities and, the amenities that we're all accustomed to, that more people would actually reflect on death. And that's what Orthodoxy is constantly trying to get us to do, is reflect on our own judgment, which is an individual thing. We're saved collectively, but we're judged individually. And so I changed my speech to talk about essentially this bifurcated lens that people are using to analyze the world. One is our ideology, because if nature is a text, the question that is most important is, what is your hermeneutical framework? Hermeneutics are the theoretical framework in which you analyze something. Exegesis is the content that is drawn from your hermeneutical lens. And so we are being programmed and conditioned through the technology to a degree in which people are just totally divorced from reality in a multitude of ways. And so I'm going to be doing a new stream in the next couple of days on Marshall McLuhan, because McLuhan and his theories about technology and how they affect our sensory ratios, I think I did that probably 4 years ago, so I'm going to do a new stream on McLuhan again for anybody who's not familiar. But yeah, I did the speech at Montanic. I was the last one to go. It turned out it went really well. And I was really nervous because I didn't have anything written. I just had a handful of bullet points, and I just started riffing. And ended up lasting for an hour and 15 minutes. So things went well. I've unnecessarily nervous beforehand. But yeah, we had a great trip. As I told you guys last time I was live before we left, I left, 9 days before the event started, and it was so Jenny and I could explore the Mountain West, and it was fantastic. We went to Denver, flew into Denver, immediately got our rental car. If anybody's from the Colorado Mountain West area, do feel free to chime in here. But we drove immediately west into the mountains, went up to Blue Sky Mountain, of which it was raining and then snowing on us. And then we hiked for about 45 minutes around Echo Lake, which is up there at the top of the mountain. Then we drove down through the mountains, through Evergreen, through Woodland Park, down to Colorado Springs, where we stayed with a lifelong friend of mine. Was able to meet up with Jim Bob, Meg Bob, and the crew, their whole family. We had a great steak dinner with the Jim Bobs, if you will. And then drove down to Colorado Springs. We saw Garden of the Gods. We drove up to Pikes Peak. That's 14,000 feet. From there, we drove through Independence Pass. If you guys go to Colorado, you must drive through Independence Pass. It's one of the best drives. It's so beautiful. It's considered one of the most beautiful drives in the United States. So we did that, drove through Independence Pass, went to Aspen. Aspen was pretty boring. Drove to western Colorado, ended up staying in Vail that night, kind of made a loop, if you will. Vail was kind of cool, very touristy, very expensive. It's basically a vacation place for the wealthy, a ski resort. But the Vail Village is built on a Bavarian style. So you're familiar with like Munich, capital city there in Bavaria, southeastern Germany. And so Jenny loved it because it reminded her of her childhood when she went with her family to the Alps. So we did that. Then we hit Steamboat. Then we landed somewhere in some small mountain town in Wyoming. And the whole time we were trying to stay in the mountains just to see new things. Eventually hit the small town in Wyoming. And then the next day we come to Teton, and we come in from the east, which is a unique, normally you come up through Jackson, Wyoming, or Jackson Hole. We came from the east, which is also considered to be the most beautiful mountain reveal in America, because you come up this hill, and then right behind it are the Grand Tetons, the national park. And I shit you not, as soon as we saw that, we also saw a female grizzly bear with two cubs about 25, 30 yards away on the other side of the road, which we all stopped and viewed. So our trip in regards to seeing animals, which was one of our goals, started off very well. Then we ended up spending a little time in Jackson, Wyoming. From there, went to Jenny Lake. Very beautiful, very beautiful. If you're ever at Grand Tetons, do take the time, whether it be 3 or 4 hours, to hike around Jenny Lake. It is a crystal clear lake that is filled through a waterfall from the Grand Tetons, and you can actually hike. It's the waterfall's on the backside of the lake. You can hike to it and then hike around the whole lake. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Then from there, we decided Jackson, Wyoming is a little expensive. It was like $350 a night for a hotel room, so a little rich for my blood. From there, we ended up driving through Yellowstone and stayed over in Idaho near West Yellowstone for a couple nights, and just explored Yellowstone. Had a fantastic time at Yellowstone, and then we went to Butte. And in fact, on the way to Butte, we through Providence, so we had no service for like 7 hours, like no Wi-Fi, no data service, driving through Yellowstone. And I'm thinking, well, we're going to exit. We got to go northwest here. That's where Butte, Montana is. I'm in Yellowstone, and we're heading through Lamar Valley. We're going to exit out of the northeast exit or entrance of Yellowstone. I'm thinking there's got to be a road that cuts back north. We have no service. We have no map. But when we cut through here, I'm going to make the first left. We'll cut back into Montana. Everything will be fine. Well, it turns out there is no turn left. So we took a 2.5 to 3 hour detour in the wrong direction, which turned out to be like my wife's favorite part of the trip. We're going to like the most, famous national parks, Teton and Yellowstone. And her favorite part was driving through what's called Beartooth Mountain Highway or Beartooth Mountain Pass. Absolutely gorgeous. It's probably 7 in the evening, 8 o'clock in the evening. The sun's beginning to set, and we end up, this mountain pass takes you up and over the mountains in Montana to take you towards Billings, which is not the direction we needed to go. But we get to the top of the mountain, and it drops from like 70 degrees at the bottom to like 36 degrees at the top. And we see people snowmobiling. We see the tracks of people skiing. And it was just gorgeous. It was gorgeous. And then we ended up stopping in Bozeman and then making our way to Butte. And Montanica was fantastic. I mean, I highly recommend anybody to go. And one of the big changes that I noticed, because I hadn't done it in 2 years. I did Montanica the first 3 years, hadn't done it the last two. And so this was my first time in 3 years attending the event. One, the demographic makeup is different. Back in the day, it was 95% young men, and then you had clergy and maybe their wives. What I noticed this year was way more couples, young families, single men, single women, older people. So the audience, the attendees at Montanica, very different. It's the biggest Montanica we had. I think it was like 180 people. And the speakers included, of course, Vladika, Metropolitan Jonah, who had a fantastic speech and really just a incredible man. I think that was the fourth event I've done with Vladika, and every time, I mean, there's, the kids want to talk about aura. Metropolitan Jonah has an aura when you're with him in person. Just a fantastic man. I love and cherish the moments I'm able to chat with him. So Vladika, Metropolitan Jonah, of course, FDA kicked off the event with his speech. Then John Heers did a speech talking, again, the premise of Montanica was orthodoxy and nature. And John Heers had a really interesting speech, essentially, because, begin is talking about, you're thinking orthodoxy and nature, you're thinking of the Tetons, you're thinking Yellowstone, you're thinking wildlife and nature. And then he makes an argument that the highest pinnacle of nature are human beings, and therefore, where he experiences nature is in New York City. John Heers is a New Yorker, but really did a good discussion on corporatism and the dehumanization of our neighbor, essentially. Then Dr. Tony Baumkamp, a biologist, talked about various species that are endangered or now extinct. Then Dr. Seraphim Foltz spoke about the loss of poetry, some of the problems with the West, the death of God, a lack of an appreciation for the natural world. And then another really good speaker was Protodeacon Patrick. If you guys have ever heard him, Protodeacon Patrick spoke about essentially why women need to submit to their husband. And he was very straightforward. It was so refreshing because it's basically the red pill in the manosphere, but articulated through a clerical voice in the nomenclature of orthodoxy. But it was all the same stuff. I even saw old women, because he was confronting women with the fact that disobedience to your husband. Now, obviously, men have to abide by certain principles to be the leader and provider of their family. But if they're doing that, he highlights that it's actually a sin for women to disobey, and that this is something that you need to be confessing to your priest and stuff like that. But fantastic speech. I don't know when we're going to be getting our speeches back, but I kind of referenced everyone's speech in my last speech. I was kind of the capstone, kind of the last speech. And so the event went really well. And if you guys have ever done a Supra, have you heard John Heers talk about the Georgian Supras before? I mentioned that we did one when we did the conference in Florida with Jay Dyer and Father Vladimir and FDA. Father Peter Heers was there, Father Hans Jacobsy was there, but we did a conference on the difference between Athens and Jerusalem. This was in November of last year. I met Ben, Cleaves the Antiquity was there. And during that one, we had a Supra over at Neil and Kate, the Dirt Poor Robins. I've had Neil on before. They're a husband and wife duo that are great musicians, very, very fun people. Shout out to Neil and Kate. Love them. And hopefully we can spend more time with them. But they hosted John and all the people that were invited to the Supra from the conference. And it was incredible. That was my first real experience to the Georgian Supra. And then we did another one for VIP and the speakers and their wives in Montanica. And I'll tell you, you listen to John, you don't really get a full picture of what the Supra is because he waxes so poetically about it. But let me just break down what is the Supra. The Supra is a Georgian toasting ceremony / ritual that is symbolically built upon the liturgical service in the Orthodox Church. It's a pre-Christian tradition in Georgia, typically dealing with the mourning of someone's death. People would get together, they would feast, they drink alcohol, specifically Georgian wine, and they give toast. And there's a toastmaster, and his name referred to in Georgian as the Tamada. In a sense, he is in place of the bishop. And if you have clergy there, the bishop would sit on one end, and then the Tamada would sit on the other. And the Tamada, for this brief period of the supra ritual, sort of takes the place of the authoritative figure. Now, this is obviously John Hears. And what John does is provide a sort of general toast. So, for example, he may do a toast talking about how, society depends upon men fulfilling their duty. And so many of us were affected by incredible men in our lives, most notably our fathers or our uncles or our brothers. And so this one is to the great men in our lives. And then everybody toasts, everybody drinks, and then you go back to conversation, you're talking to the person you're next to, and then someone amongst the table will ask to do a toast. And then they'll stand up and they'll make their toast specific to a person. So John does a general toast that includes the whole table, and then individuals will stand up and do a specific toast to their father or to whoever is related to the general toast at hand. And I'll tell you, man, it is incredible. It gets so emotional because people essentially open up about the most intimate and personal aspects of their lives. For example, Father Russell stood up to do a toast. This was actually the general toast was about great men in our lives. And he stood up in reference, we had a Serbian priest there named Father Nikolai. And Father Russell, who's the head priest there at Holy Trinity, the Serbian church in Butte, stands up and says, this is to Father Nikolai's grandfather. Now, I didn't know the context, so I had to be filled in. Father Nikolai, an American, he's Serbian, but he's born in America. He has no accent, speaks perfect Serbian, perfect English. Very funny guy, actually. Very, very cool guy. He had just been in Serbia the week before because his grandfather was martyred by the communists in 1945, and he was an Orthodox priest who had his own parish there. And when Father Nikolai went back to be a representative for his grandfather on behalf of him being canonized into the Serbian Orthodox Church, he was able to find the place in which he lived. Now, it was totally decrepit. It was run down. It was barely standing. But him and another gentleman that were there found it and went in and were able to locate the patristic theological texts and even Bibles that his grandfather had, essentially untouched since he was killed in 1945, was able to take that with him back to America. And seeing Father Nikolai talk about that experience with tears rolling down his face, very powerful. There's another gentleman, I'm not going to say names, who this was a general toast about mothers and the importance of mothers, and stood up and recounted how he just buried his mom about a week and a half before the Supra while we were in Butte, Montana, and that she was Protestant. And she was not Orthodox, and he has taken his faith very seriously. He's converted. He's been Orthodox for a while. And he said that he knows that she's going to make it to heaven because of her heart, and that he's been praying for her, and then recounted that he found the saint that prays for non-Orthodox Christians. And forgive me, I forget the name of the saint. I think it's Saint Verus or Saint Vera, Saint Verus, something of that nature. Somebody in the chat can correct me. And he found that icon and placed it on her chest in the casket that he buried her in the week before we were there. Just really touching, like powerful testimonies from people. So that's what the Supra is. If you ever go to, the Supra with John Hears, he has a restaurant in South Carolina. I highly, highly recommend. If you're ever at an Orthodox event and you see that John Hears or one of his Tamadas are there to do a Supra, attend. Now, I cannot tell you what's going to come up. Sometimes they last 3 hours. That's typically a short one. But in Georgia, they last 6, 8, 10 hours long. They just keep going. And they're just bringing Georgian cuisine, food. You're just feasting, and you're drinking alcohol. And you're not allowed to fill your own cup because this is a Christian Orthodox themed ritual, a ceremony. So you must be looking out for other people, and if their cup is getting low, you fill it up. You're not allowed to pour alcohol into your own drink, and your drink's never allowed to be empty. So therefore, everyone must be watching each other and essentially serving each other. So that was a FDA in my second Supra, and FDA and me, all of our Supras, the two that we've done together, have been together. So with his wife and my wife, I attended both of them, and man, they're powerful. It's hard to even articulate what it is, because me describing it, I don't know if it's actually coming across to you guys, that it is, it's incredibly emotional. I mean, it's people that you don't know, and they share some of the most raw experiences of their lives. And then you all toast, and then the Supra's over, and you feel like you are like intimately connected with these people. And that's part of what it is, because that's what we're doing in Orthodoxy. That's what it means to be part of the body of Christ. That's what it means to belong to a community and a parish. So, you know, some of the stuff that came up at Montanica, we had a bunch of conversations with a host of different clergy from around the country. One of the interesting things that coincided with, I know you guys saw that Jay has retired from theological debates. Now, he did that totally unprompted. No clergy told him he had to do that or anything. But one of the interesting things that emerged, because it was myself and FDA, and I think that may have been it. And then it was all the clergy that were present. There was tons of priests. And one of the things that was brought up is that we've won the debate sphere. One of the things that they mentioned is they didn't have so much a problem with Orthodox debating because we have the faith. One of the things that was mentioned, though, was that we've already won. All the arguments have already been stated. There's really not an Orthodox Christian debate that could happen now that hasn't already happened with the arguments that are going to be said already presented. And so essentially what we're doing is a rehearsing over and over of the same arguments. And though the clergy said there's nothing intrinsically wrong with any of that, it just feels stagnant for Orthodoxy to truly be a cultural force in America. Is that if we just keep it as online debaters and presenters trying to rationally convince people of Orthodoxy, we're not going to have the impact that if we try to build something and inspire people. So clergy, again, as I said, they're not against debates. But they were talking about how they wished that the orthosphere online, or at least content creators, were more focused on a sort of inspiring message, trying to get people to actually act. That's the hardest part. So many of the people become rationally convinced that orthodoxy is true, which it is. But how many people are acting as if it's true, or changing their lives, or going to church? You know, I spoke before I left, actually. I spoke with a young man, so smart, very, very intelligent. Maybe he has a bit of the tism, okay, as so many of the Orthodox do. But he knew history, he knew the Orthodox theology, he knew the tradition. And I asked him, what church do you belong to? He's like, I just started going to church. I go, okay, what was your experience? He goes, I went to this parish and the women didn't even cover their hair. Can you believe that? It's probably a liberal parish, so I'm going to go church. I'm going to go somewhere else next time. And I thought, whoa, hold on, dude. You went to a church for the first time, and because not all the women had their hair covered, you think it's a liberal parish that is not worthy of your attendance? That's a big problem. That's a big problem because you're basically taking orthodoxy and putting it into a rationalist Protestant framework. That I have all the arguments, I have it all worked out in my head, I know what's true, and then when I see a living community of people, of fallen people, you're not willing to engage with that. And I told him, it's like, dude, What about, because he mentions like it's old ladies, it's young women, a bunch of people didn't have their hair covered. And it's like, dude, you don't know the life of that woman, that 80-year-old woman. Her husband may be dead. Maybe 2 or 3 of her sons are dead. Like, the point of going to the church is, yes, all knowing the rational and the arguments of everything is so important. But, you can't just walk into an Orthodox parish and then judge the priest and all the people in it because they don't live up to your idealistic expectations of what Orthodoxy should look like. In fact, it's indicative of, if there is an ortho bro problem, which I hate that term, if there is an ortho bro problem, that's the problem. The problem is, one, we're so socially disconnected. Like, why don't you stay at fellowship at that liberal parish? Of course, it wasn't a liberal parish. I'm sure it wasn't. But why don't you talk with people? Why don't you get to know people? Why don't you be accountable to the priest and to the community? And when they ask you to show up, you help at the bake sale or the whatever's going on at the parish. Like, that's where Orthodoxy is lived. It's the ability to see each other, and even when the other person is wrong, have a heart of forgiveness. I told you guys, and this is what I told the young man that I was talking to, is, when I entered the church, I had a blessing from my priest, even though I was a catechumen, to continue the online work I was doing. Now, I was in a unique position. I was pursuing a PhD, and I knew a lot about Orthodoxy before I was Orthodox. And I chatted with my priest, and he gave me a blessing. And there was a gentleman at my parish who I came across his, at that time, his Twitter account. And I go to his page, and I go to the section they used to have of your likes, so you can see what content you're liking. And I saw that this gentleman who was serving at my parish and who had a lot of influence, he was doing, I'm not going to say everything. He's just very influential in the parish because he ran so many different things. He was a very instrumental individual. But I saw in his likes, like, photos of women's tits. Now, not totally nude, but, anyways, sexually enticing images. I saw him like posts from Nancy Pelosi. I saw him like things regarding abortion. And so I was very angry inside. I actually, held this animosity toward this individual. Now, it wasn't until COVID was over, because honestly, they weren't good on COVID. They wanted social distancing. They wanted masks. They wanted, the whole rigmarole. Again, furthering and deepening the animosity I had towards this person. Because I know Orthodoxy, right? Although it's not lived there, it's lived in here. It's like, how can this guy serve at the church? How can this guy, be so instrumental? He's not even truly Orthodox. And so I remember one day at fellowship, I humiliated him by bringing up his Twitter post in front of our priest. And our priest didn't know. And eventually, we had Forgiveness Sunday. Forgiveness Sunday, who's anybody participated, is a very powerful service. It's when you look face to face to everyone in your church and you acknowledge that you're a sinner and ask for forgiveness, and then they do the same thing and ask for forgiveness. And it wasn't until then, when I looked him in the eyes and did that I could give him a hug and tell him I loved him. That's what Orthodoxy is. Now, eventually he has come around and changed his opinions on things, and I would say become more based. But whether he did or not is not the point. The point is the transitioning of your heart. That's what you should be experiencing while you're in the church. And that includes your noetic faculties. That includes your discernment. Like, if you're not going to church regularly, if you're not participating in the grace of the community and the Eucharist, if you've already been baptized and brought in, you are setting yourself up for delusion. Prelest isn't just, I still think New Age things or whatever it may be. No, I've been seeing prelest among Orthodox Christians who profess Orthodoxy, but at the same time aren't actually attending services, aren't actually taking the Eucharist. And this is going to affect your noetic facility and your ability to see the world clearly. Because that's what we're doing as the body of Christ, coming together and suffering together. That's what we're doing. We are being healed by Christ. It's it's the hospital of the soul. But what is literally happening, and I guarantee you, if anybody out there watching this is actually taking things seriously, attending services, you know that this is true. You literally can see things that you did not see before. Now, I'm not saying you're seeing ghosts or, phantoms at night. I'm seeing the connections of the world, patterns, how things interconnect, intuition. It's like your intuition kicks in and is more accurate. This is God giving you eyes to see and ears to hear. This is part of the transformative process of being Orthodox. And once you experience that, that's what it's all about. It's all about relationships. And so if you're Orthodox, but you have these chaotic relationships with everyone around you, you're not. Because the whole point is about communion and community and true communication. And you can only do that with other people. And doing it online is not going to suffice. You have to go and belong to a community, and you have to engage with people that you don't like. Part of the bifurcation, the synthetic lens that I was talking about is we all exist in these online communities. And I'll speak for myself here. I don't want to listen to liberals. I don't want to listen to, Muslims or any type of group of people that I'm not connected to. So I voluntarily chose my own online silo, right? My community that I listen to. Now, at the same time, we have to be aware that that's not full reality. And I think so many young people, and shots fired at Gen Z right now, it's just something I've observed, is that Gen Z in particular, because they're less socialized than previous generations due to all the technology, they sort of perceive that the consumeristic mentality of how we choose our online silos, which we all do, is somehow can be transported into reality, and that you get to just choose who's in your life. That's not how it works. You go to a church and you belong to a community of people that you may or may not like. The goal of your spiritual growth is to be able to love them anyways. And you'll know when that actually happens in your heart. And I'm still working on it myself. I just gave the one example of the one individual. And don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of darkness in my heart regarding what people do and what people say. But at least I'm conscious of that's where I need to work on. It's not the ideas. Once you've convinced of orthodoxy, you're convinced of orthodoxy. You want to learn more about the church fathers, the arguments and all that stuff, go for it. Especially if you have the facility for it, because we need more people to articulate the faith. But, realize that the whole purpose of all this stuff is your lived community. If you don't have a lived community, you're not Orthodox. I don't care if you've been baptized or not. If you're not in a community that is accountable to other people, you're not living the faith, and that's the whole point of it. So I'll leave the preaching alone. I'll stop. I'll get off my soapbox now. But anyways, Montanica, the whole trip was fantastic. We left Butte after Montana and drove down to Idaho Falls, drove on the backside of the Tetons, and then was able to meet up with Jim Bob and Meg Bob again. And it was great. It was great. I really appreciate Jim Bob. He's a really good guy. The family have such a beautiful family, and so that's the whole point, man. Is building friendships with people, being accountable to people, forgiving people when they do you wrong. That's what it's all about. And it was great to finish my last night on the trip. Ginny and I hanging out with Jim Bob and Meg Bob and their beautiful family, and just love them. I love them. So God bless the Jim Bobs. I know that's not their name, but I use the online moniker just for privacy purposes. And just everybody we met. It's a transformative experience. If you can go to Montanica, and I don't even know if I'll be a speaker next year, but if you have the opportunity, do it. Do it, because you need to be around people. That's what it's all about. So, all right, smash that like, guys. We're going to be getting into the news now. Sorry to make you guys wait. Tallow Fries throws in 5, says, great to have you back, brother. Well, thank you very much, Tallow Fries. Yes, do use the beef tallow. My wife and I are very conscious of the seed oils. My wife is pretty good on all the toxins. She tries to keep us eating pretty clean. Victor Ziegler throws in another 10. Thank you so much. He says, acquire the Holy Ghost and 1,000 around you will be saved. St. Seraphim of Sarov, the ortho way as you described. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing about, speaking with some of the speakers, we were talking about how saints can transform the world around them and the ways in which animals react to them, and so we don't realize that we are essentially a vector of energy. We're constantly talking about the uncreated energies of God, but we then are a vector of energy exuding into the world. What energies are coming out of you? Are they the uncreated energies? Because if they are, they actually change the world around you. And that's one of the powerful realizations of how God works in the world through us. How much of a conduit are you and I actually being? And that's what Seraphim of Sarov is getting at with the Holy Ghost. So, all right, let's see. Now, one of the things before we get into today's stream is I want to tell you guys that if we don't have a super chat. I'm going to put a new super chat goal up here. We'll set it at 20. If we end up getting 50 super chats today, you guys can sponsor a stream. I have no sponsored streams lined up at the moment. So we were able to finish all of them previously. And so if you guys are still interested in Basil the Bulgar Slayer, one of the great emperors of the Byzantine Empire. I know that was a popular one. The Norman Conquest of England, the Battle of Hastings, that was a popular one. Also, shout out to Snagglebeast. He wanted me to do the Great Northern War, who was at Montanica, by the way. A good guy. So anyways, that's sort of the goal today, is if you guys can help me reach a super chat goal, then we can actually do another sponsored stream. There's so many sponsored streams. And also, don't forget to use DonoChat or Streamlabs if you want to show some support. They don't take as much money, so would greatly appreciate that. Jordan Johnson throws in 20 over on DonoChat. Thank you so much, Jordan. He said, 2 Jews fighting in the Holocaust. One throws dirt in the other's eyes, to which he replies, hey, don't bring my parents into this. Wow. Thank you, Jordan, for the support. Do appreciate it. And then let me see if anybody's seen anything in on Streamlabs. Before we dive into all the new stuff, we got tons of news to get into today, and at least get back into the swing of things. Let's see. Keenan throws in 5 over on Streamlabs. Thank you so much, Keenan. Shout out to Keenan Beats, by the way. He's got a new... he's got some new songs. I hope to be featuring some of them in the near future. He throws in 5, says, the colors of that suit are great. We demand another men's fashion stream. Glad you're back. Well, thank you, Keenan. You know what? You're not the first to ask for another men's fashion stream. I would be open to that. I don't know how popular they'll be, although I've got multiple requests, but I can set that for a future content creation, because you're not the only one. Multiple people have asked for another one, so I'll keep that in mind for sure. But thank you so much, brother, for the support. God bless you. Brecht Arnaret throws in 10, says, appreciate your work. Well, thank you so much, Brecht. Really appreciate the support. God bless you. Young James throws in 10, says, familiar with Animus of Jung. Thoughts? Yeah, I'm very familiar with all the Jungian psychology. Jungian psychology, I think, is pretty much a dead end. In fact, I know so many people that get so hung up on Jungian psychology that they seem to never be able to progress because they're so convinced that this is the foundation. Well, if that's the case, all archetypes are psychological. If you're Orthodox, archetypes are the logi, the divine principles of creation. So when we're talking about, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, It's not that the hero's journey is some archetype that resonates with the collective unconscious. No, it's that the hero's journey is the archetype of what every man should be doing. It's essentially the story of Christ and his sacrifice. That is the hero's archetype. He is the ultimate hero. And so when we look at archetypes themselves, they're all rooted, the archetype of the father. Well, the archetype of the father is built in the telos of what a father is, which is built in the logo, the divine principles of fatherhood itself, the logi. So my problem with Jungian psychology is that it prevents the transcendent origin of archetypes itself. They're metaphysical. They're rooted in the logos. They're rooted in Christ. He gives the archetypal form to all things. It's not rooted in some Jungian psychology. And so when you get to the anima and animus of Jung, it's all developed based on a Western esoteric understanding. He was very much interested in Gnosticism, if you've ever read the Red Book. But Jung essentially was taking the idea of the alchemical hermaphrodite. So if you've ever looked at alchemical art, say through 16th, 17th century Europe, part of the Western esoteric tradition, you'll see like a half male, half female figure, sometimes two-headed, sometimes not. And this idea was that full, how do I want to say it? That the full expression of humanity is a synthesis of parts of both. But we don't, as Orthodox Christians, see it that way. And in fact, we would say that presupposition is the entire basis of all the sexual degeneracy we see around the world. So could Jung argue against transgenderism? Now, maybe he would say it's some misunderstanding of a person's anima, but they could easily make Jungian arguments to the opposite and saying, look, what I'm doing is actually totally fusing. I'm essentially transcending the category, the binary category, and elevating myself, attaining some type of gnosis or enlightenment. So in that sense, I don't see Jung as anywhere near a countercultural figure to the debauchery we see today. If anything, he's a catalyst towards it. And people limiting archetypes and meaning and dreams to just a collective unconscious essentially castrates God's activity in the world. And in that sense, I don't find it incredibly useful. Is Jung interesting? Yeah, I have tons of Jung books. I've read Jung. I studied Jung. I used to be really into Jung. And then I became Orthodox and I grew up. So, it's a journey, young James. It's a journey. So if you're just now getting into Jung and you think some of these ideas, I'm not telling you not to look at it, but it's all about the paradigm. It's all about the presuppositions. It's all about how facets that we find interesting fit into a larger composite. So God bless you. Thank you for the support. I appreciate that. Peregrine Took throws in 5 says, excuse me, been doing some research on 19th century science. It's pure fantasy. The whole religion of science, frankly, barely has any foundations. It's all hypotheses, assumptions, and theory presented as immutable and verified truths. Yeah. Yes. That's really whether it be all the Orthodox, I've heard Jim Bob, I've heard Father Deacon, I've heard Jay, all say the same thing, that science is only a methodology. How do we come to a factual claim about the world? Well, we measure it and we average it. That's all we can do. That is the scientific method. You have hypotheses, you test, you measure, you average, you come to some type of analytical or statistical data on the output, and you see if that is repeatable. If it is, now you have a scientific fact. But that's all it is. That's why scientism truly is a religion, because people... And really, if you're studying 19th century science, then you need to be studying the role of the engineer. I know technically we consider the white lab coat different than the engineer, but by the 19th century, the 1800s, it's the engineer who is considered by both Europe and America to be the priest of creation, because Francis Bacon's revolution, it's called the Baconian Revolution, what that was and how it occurred in the 16th and 17th century, was that he changed the syllogistic approach towards truth claims. So before the Baconian Revolution, we'll say early 1600s, which this was fully submitted, the way you proved something to be true was still using a sort of scholastic method, Aristotelian logical approach. You'd put it in a syllogism. If A, then B, therefore C. And what Bacon does is he totally transforms, or again, essentially a revolution of knowledge, claiming that it's about utility. Knowledge is not about the aesthetic of the syllogism. Knowledge is about, can you build something and make it work? Utility becomes couched within this Baconian revolution that is focused on utilitarian means. So therefore, from the this gets really developed the early 1600s, once you get in, and it's 1660 is the founding of the Royal Society. So this is now full-blown, secular science. That's 1660. Once you get into the 19th century, the 1800s, it's really about the engineer and also these weird psychological things that get developed at the end of the 19th century. So it's the engineer, and that's kind of the world we live in now. The priest of creation is the coder. It's the computer engineer. It's the person building the technology. That is the person who's essentially building the digital prison that we all live in. And this fake reality, this bifurcated synthetic lens that everybody's living in. Go camp for 2 weeks out in nature. And stay off your phone. You'll come back to reality. You'll figure out what's important. You'll be able to lose the attachments to, day-to-day concerns that are really part of the synthetic world. Most people, me included, don't realize how much we're focused on the synthetic world opposed to the real world. But your spiritual life and the natural world itself are really your last means to something truly tangible that's real. Because everything else, it's fugazi. It's all fugazi. So, anyways, thank you very much. Peregrine took for the $5 support. God bless you. Really appreciate it. Okay, let me catch up with everybody. Melly throws in 5. Thank you so much, Melly. She says, how is your doggy? Doggy is good. Cody was actually in here earlier. We have a Bernedoodle for anybody who is interested in my personal life. We have a Bernedoodle. It's a Bernese Mountain Dog Poodle mix. And I've told you guys before, it was actually a woman here in Indianapolis whose husband plays professional basketball in Spain. She was pregnant. She had a kid. He signed a contract. She wanted to move to Spain. She had 2 dogs. For one way or another, I was contacted because I used to have a pit bull, and he was very, very well trained. So somebody's like, oh, you need to get this dog. You need to rescue this dog. It's actually my sister. And ended up rescuing him. He was like 4 years old when I got him. He's now 6.5. Fantastic dog. The doodles are goofy dogs, but they are lovable. So thank you for that, Melly. MFZ throws in 10 RON, says, that suit is tight. Much love and God bless. Well, thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll do a fashion stream in the near future. I do appreciate you guys, congratulating and complimenting the drip. So as appreciation, I guess I'll have to talk a little bit about it. MFZ throws in another 10, says, also, incense sniffers unite. Billions will sniff. Amen to that. Amen to that. I don't see orthodoxy slowing down in any way. I truly believe we have dominated the debate sphere. I truly believe that Protestantism has already been defeated. Like, it's over. Protestantism is over. I was talking with someone recently who had firsthand knowledge of some of these Zionist evangelical churches, and they are losing young people every single day. They are absolutely hemorrhaging attendees, mostly young people, because they're tired of the Zionist stuff, which we're going to be getting into today as well. And it's like, what are they going to do? The evangelicals were the only thing left in Protestantism, because if you look at the mainline Protestant churches, the average age of attendee is almost 70 years old. And I don't wish ill on anybody, but once the boomers pass away, there's going to be no one at Protestant churches. So Protestantism is pretty much done. Really, we're just beating a dead horse at this point. But I'm not saying I'm against debating. Obviously, I do debates. But culturally, we've defeated Protestantism. It's done. It's over. And look at the quality of debaters they put forth. I saw that Father Stephen DeYoung, for example, is going to be doing a debate with James White. That should be interesting on the atonement. But, I mean, it's over. It's over. They're not going to win. We have all the cultural energy and cachet. It's just a matter of time. It's really just us being individual role models for our families, our friends, the people around us, to get people interested on why we do the things we do. Why are you the person you are if you're an inspiring figure? And I mean, you could be a plumber at your plumbing job, but somebody notices a difference. That is what we need. We just need us all to be leaders in our own way and bring people to the faith by wanting to know, what is it? What is it that makes you tick? So America will be Orthodox. It may not be this generation. It may not be the next generation, but it will be an eventual generation. America will be Orthodox, that's for sure. Junto says, the fact that James White is even doing a debate with Father DeYoung shows what an absolute bubble James White is living in. He is in utter delusion. Well, yeah. And of course, he wouldn't debate Jay when Jay was still doing the theological debates because he would annihilate him. So, all right, enough of all this stuff. Let's get into some of our news stuff today. So let me pull up our first string of stories. I don't know if you guys saw this one, but J.D. Vance's top donor suggests that Pope Leo is a tool of Antichrist. Now, we covered a little bit. I'm not going to read this whole article to you, but we covered a little bit about this regarding Peter Thiel. Remember those? I did a whole stream where he did an interview with, I forget what magazine, maybe it was Vanity Fair or something, and he talked about Antichrist. And of course, then he went to the Vatican to speak about the Antichrist. I think he gave like 4 lectures or something like that. Well, Peter Thiel's argument, who of course, he is a homosexual, transhumanist, technocrat, owner of Palantir, the most invasive surveillance system known to man, aiding and abetting the genocide in Gaza and the West Bank, and what's happening in southern Lebanon, aiding the targeting in Iran. Apparently, the school we talked about months and months ago, where the U.S. hit the girls' school in Iran, killed like 166 innocent girls. Well, turns out that was a Palantir target. So Palantir did that. Again, the blessings of using AI to target civilians in a hot war. And mind you, that was the first strike that the U.S. sent. So it makes you almost think it's almost a magic ritual of human sacrifice. The first target the U.S. fires on is selected by a Palantir AI targeter, and it just happens to be a innocent girls' school. They didn't even target the weapons facility that was somewhere in the vicinity. So, that's who we're talking about here regarding Peter Thiel. Part of the PayPal mafia, all that different stuff. And there's some interesting stuff. I don't mean to cast aspersions, but, Peter Thiel has some weird stuff with some of his young boyfriends that just mysteriously die. There was one guy who was apparently his young lover and was going to say some things about what they were up to, and then he just happened to commit suicide by jumping off the top of a building. I don't know if you guys saw that. That's a fact. That happened. So anyways, Peter Thiel, in this interview about Antichrist, he's been talking about Antichrist over and over and over again. His argument is that the Antichrist would be someone who is reluctant to support the development of advanced artificial intelligence and technology. So basically, he argues that anyone speaking out against the projects and development of those projects that he is a part of is fostering the spirit of Antichrist. And it's funny because in his ramblings, he always says that the Antichrist would always talk about the Antichrist and make you think that someone else is the Antichrist. It's like, but bro, isn't that exactly what you're doing? I think most people with the spirit of discernment can see how the technologies that are being built are clearly part of the spirit of Antichrist. And yet he claims, and I'm not here to defend the Pope. You know how I feel about Catholicism and the Pope. But is the Pope the Antichrist? Because he talked about morality. He talked about the limiting of advanced technology. And so according to this article, Peter Thiel urged J.D. Vance, his protege, to ignore the Pope on all moral questions and simply pray for him. So Peter Thiel, who essentially was the mentor of J.D. Vance, told him, a supposed traditional Catholic married to a Hindu, and I believe his children are all Hindu. You make that math. I'm not sure. But this traditional Catholic, he told him to not abide by any of the moral precepts, essentially, of the Pope and the Church, and only to pray for him, because the Pope has speaking out, and it's not even explicitly anti-technology or anti-AI. I thought the Vatican, I remember reading the Vatican did something about looking at how AI could be used to facilitate the church, using like humanoid robots or something, talking about their salvation. There was like a conference on that type of stuff. Well, clearly, robots aren't sentient people. They don't have a soul. It's pretty basic. It's pretty straightforward. So this article here, I'll read just a little bit and then we'll move on here. It says, a few weeks ago, a series of leaked recordings and transcripts from a private lecture series in San Francisco began circulating. They included comments from tech billionaire Peter Thiel, the most important political patron of Vice President J.D. Vance and one of the wealthiest, most influential minds in Silicon Valley. In these lectures, Thiel doesn't just flirt with the apocalyptic, he goes all in, openly discussing the Antichrist, naming Pope Leo as a potential manifestation of that figure. Now, this is where I do agree that the ecumenism of the Catholic Church is a precursor of Antichrist. I do not see the Catholic Church standing in opposition to the Antichrist religion, which, as we've talked about, is perennialism, ecumenism. The end-time religion is not one specific faith. It's the agreement that all the faiths are equal. That is the end religion, because from that metric, everyone will submit to the Antichrist. So I believe that the Vatican is already well in its progress towards that direction. But Pope Leo, probably not. Probably not. Of course, he has to be Jewish, right? So we have to have a Jew to be Antichrist. But Peter Thiel names Pope Leo as a potential manifestation of that figure, and most disturbingly advised J.D. Vance to ignore the Pope on moral matters altogether. Let that sink in. The main backer of the likely GOP nominee for president is accusing the Bishop of Rome of being an agent of the end times, which, I actually can't totally disagree with that, and telling Vice President Vance to disregard the Pope's moral guidance, which I guarantee you the moral guidance of Pope Leo, no matter the contemporary state of the Catholic Church, is probably more insightful than anything that Peter Thiel has to tell you. I think Peter Thiel will probably be the last person I want to hear tell me about moral advice. And yet, outside this community, the story barely made a dent. No major religion reporter ran with it. No flagship tech newsletter dug into the theological implications. No one in mainstream political media even seemed to notice. That's because so many institutions, religious, secular, and digital alike, are siloed. They miss the big story precisely because they're too entrenched in the spheres to see what's happening at the intersections. That's why letters from Leo exist. That's why your support matters. This is from Letters from Leo, the website. So anyway, it is what it is. But as you know, we do not support Peter Thiel, any of the technocrats, and that includes the Catholic Church. So really, we have no dog in that fight. But it is interesting that, and really, I think the takeaway from this article is not so anything new about Peter Thiel. It's that, J.D. Vance is not a character to fully trust. I don't, at least. I've heard Fuentes and others spout the same thing. I'm highly skeptical of J.D. Vance, given his trajectory, given the fact that, what was it, Hillbilly Eulogy, Like, how is it that J.D. Vance goes through these elite institutions? I think he went to Yale, works for Peter Thiel, and then his autobiography gets on Netflix, and then he runs for senator in the GOP and then becomes vice president, who, from what I read, was mainly due to the advocacy of Donald Trump Jr. He's the one that really pushed his dad to get J.D. Vance. So, especially with everything going on in the Trump administration, a lot of corruption happening right now. I don't know if you guys saw this. A lot of corruption. So, anyways, moving on. The real takeaway is you can't trust, I would argue, somewhat of a chameleon figure. There's just so many question marks regarding J.D. Vance. Is he Catholic? Is he not Catholic? Is he trad? Is he not trad? I mean, he literally went on Theo Von and promoted the idea of Palantir because it would prevent illegal immigrants. This is one thing that I mentioned. We're not going to focus too much on it. I mean, it's a 3-minute video, but basically, DNI, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, also a Hindu, but pretty good on a handful of topics. She has stated that she is actually stepping down. You guys are aware of this. She claims it's because her husband has severe cancer. From what I heard, that is true, though, that her husband does have a severe case of cancer. However, you remember Joe Kent, who stepped down due to Israel involvement in the administration and then basically handcuffing him, and he was prevented from investigating the Butler assassination attempt with Thomas Crooks. He was prevented from investigating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. He was prevented from investigating Israeli influence in the Trump administration. And he eventually resigned out of good consciousness. But it's been alleged, and now it's essentially becoming more the case, that Tulsi Gabbard is basically of that same perception regarding the Israeli influence. And so we don't know her full intentions. It very well may be because of her husband. The rumor was that she was going to resign due to her husband's illness in November, and that she was going to try to release as much classified documents as possible. And some of you guys may have seen that she tried to get the documents on the MKL, Martin Luther King, MLK Jr. assassination, Martin Luther King Jr. assassination, and the JFK assassination. She tried to get all the files, and then the CIA busted into her office and took them. I don't know if you guys remember that. So I think she's very, very aware that there are forces that are preventing any full disclosure. So the rumor is she's going to try to be releasing as much as she can as possible until she steps down. And today she began that with releasing classified documents of 120 biolabs that the U.S. government was running, again, publicly claiming they don't exist and accusing people of misinformation that's saying it is true, in over 30 countries, of which included Ukraine, which is exactly what Putin said when the war began. Remember, let's go back the way back machine in 2022. Remember, what was it, February 20? I think it was in the winter. I forget what month the Ukraine-Russia war began. I'm pretty sure it was 2022 if my memory serves. And one of the things that Putin said during that war is that they are going to destroy the U.S. biolabs in Ukraine. And everybody throw their hands up. Oh, he's making that up. There's no U.S. biolabs. Well, now we have confirmation 4 years later that it's all true. The U.S. not only is creating, coronaviruses at North Carolina to be sent to Wuhan, then to be released on the whole world, they have these viruses in over 30 countries. They have these labs creating viruses, man-made viruses, in over 30 countries. So what we all suspected has now been validated. Next one. This is another one-offer news item. I don't know if you saw that Jay-Z, not that I'm expecting any of you guys to be hip-hop heads or want you to be, but Jay-Z, the famous rapper, he's a big leftist, Democrat, and apparently he's going to be putting out a new album. It's to, I guess, rival Drake. There's some beef between Drake and Jay-Z and Kanye. I don't know. I don't really follow that world. However, Jay-Z is supposed to and speculated to be in the next few weeks or the next couple months to become the face of the Democratic Party to get like youth turnout and support for the DNC. Now, what's interesting is he was just spotted at a private dinner along with Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. Now, does this, me bringing this up, does this really have anything to do with Jay-Z? No. What I find so interesting about it is that Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump are having some executive dinner with Jay-Z and Rock Nation and all the people he does business with. Meanwhile, it's being talked about how he's being set up to become through this album, and he did some weird freestyle, didn't make much sense, to be the face of the DNC, and somehow Ivanka and Jared are there with him. And apparently Jay-Z was furious that this image got out, that he didn't want people to see him at dinner with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Now, we're going to be coming back to the Kushner and Ivanka Trump because we're going to get to the Albania story here in a few, but you can't trust these people. You know, you can't trust. I do not trust Ivanka Trump. I don't trust any of the Trumps at this point. Some of the rumors coming out of the Trump administration and the deals they're making is very, very concerning. And I don't mean deals on behalf of the U.S. government. I'm talking about the private business deals they're doing on the side. People like Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who technically aren't employees of the Trump administration and therefore are not held to the same regulations. And so when they go and they do these business meetings on behalf of, you know, they're going to stop the war in Iran, or they're going to meet with Putin in the Kremlin, of which, from what I read, what I heard, the last time they went to the Kremlin, they were basically shooed away as unserious people there to make money, which is exactly what they are. That the Trump administration, I saw that Donald Trump's net worth has doubled since taking office this time, which is very interesting because the first administration, he actually lost money. I think he actually lost half his net worth, and then they tried to, you know, put him in prison, all this stuff. But it made you feel, whether you disagreed with Trump on this or that, that, hey, this guy's a billionaire, and look, he's putting his neck out on the line and doing it. You kind of get a different feeling the second administration. He has over doubled his net worth. Donald Trump Jr. essentially him and Eric Trump accompany him everywhere they go, and they have doubled, if not quadrupled, their net worth. Jared Kushner has gone from being in the hundreds of millions of dollars. He's now a billionaire, and he has these weird, very interesting agreements with Saudi Arabia and some of the Gulf nations. So you just can't trust these people. You can't trust people in power right now. Okay. We're not going to dive too deep into this because it's just so low IQ, but I'll play a little bit. Nala Ray, the former OnlyFans chick, who became to Christ, loved Jesus and all this different stuff. She's now has some Christian podcast, I guess. And she had these guys, Phoenix and Cody of Eden Ministries, which are correctly identified as two crackpot deliverance ministers. They basically charge people $300 to do a private Zoom meeting with them in which they claim they are the same thing as a biblical prophet and seer. They can see the spiritual world, and then they give people advice on what they should do. So just absolute phony baloney, emotive, feminist Christianity. And even if you look at these guys, or I'll play a little bit, very sus. I get very sussy vibes from just the way they sit, the way they talk, the way they interact, and it's part and parcel of this whole form of Christianity. It's very effeminate and gay.
Thanks too.
Yeah.
It ties directly into what you're doing.
Yeah.
I let him explain mine because I don't like talking about myself. It's weird.
I'll let him describe my prophecies because I don't really like getting into it.
So I have the ability to see in the spirit realm, just like a lot of people could in the Bible. They are in the Bible, they are called seers. And so that's a title a lot of people call me and stuff. Just like Samuel in the Bible, he was able to see things all the time and stuff. Amos is another one. Amos, I always say that name wrong.
Amos. I was like, who's that?
Amos, whatever. Ezekiel could also see in the spirit realm. Elijah, Daniel, Peter, John. All these people, it's always the same people having encounters with angels and stuff because they could see it,
Yeah.
And so it's something I just have always been able to do since I was little. Like, I don't even know what it's like to not. So how I see Jesus in the spirit realm during some sessions or sometimes during at church or something, like he'll make an appearance. Like I see his light in every single believer in Christ. And especially when I'm
Jesus will make it. Yeah, sometimes I'm like seeing in the spirit realm, and all of a sudden I'll just Christ a shout out, and I just see him like wave his golden hand over here. I'm like, bro, I know you're with me, man. And I just go in the spirit realm and I just see things, and I'm just like the prophet Daniel and like Amos and Ezekiel and Jeremiah, and we're just kind of like all the same thing, man. And I just tell people what they need to do because, I'm just some, liberal guy from California, but I really know what's going on in the spirit realm. I was kind of blessed with it. It's like in my genetics.
I'm doing deliverance sessions and he shows me the courts of heaven where we're going, and he's standing there for the person I'm praying for in the courtrooms of heaven. He always just looks like a man made out of pure golden light where I can't even, he's so bright.
Courtrooms of heaven. You couldn't even use a more accurate archetype for Western Christianity. Western Christianity is, we always talk about how juridical it is, how legalistic it is, and how orthodoxy is mystical. We don't, in orthodoxy, you're never going to hear someone talk about a heavenly court. Do they also wear white wigs in heaven? I'm curious. You should tell us that. What was the judges wearing in heaven? Tell us the aesthetic. I'm very curious. What kind of drip do they have in heaven in the courtroom? But even the idea, again, his prelest, his delusional imagination, getting in, like, what are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about? In the heavenly courtroom, I'll just see Jesus there in the heavenly courtroom. Like, sometimes he's a juror, but sometimes he's the typist. And he's just like gold. He's just like pure gold. He's just like pure gold. And I just give him a shout out sometimes when I'm doing deliverance for people.
I can't even make out any facial features or anything like that. It looks like a man made of pure golden, this liquid golden light.
And the reason that he sees it like that as well is, like, there's other seers, right? And they have all seen Jesus. Is a very common thing. They see him a little bit differently. Some people could see him as like a man because that's just the way their brain works. Yeah. That's the way he presents himself to them. The way that he sees things, we've come to learn, is the embodiment of whatever that thing is. So Cody's gift of prophetic wisdom, like, even when I look at him spiritually, which we just did a video about this.
But like,
oh my gosh. So, like, Cody's like prophetic light. Like, when I look at him spiritually, he's like so cute and he's just so handsome. And I just like to stare at his face, spiritual insights, spiritually.
But like, it's like he doesn't even have like a scalp. It's almost like he's scalpless in the spirit realm. And his brain is just like, the way I see the Holy Spirit is always just like this bluish white fire. Like, it's literally just ablaze in your entire cavity of your chest right now. Same with Cody and stuff. But his is also like in his brain. And it's
I don't even know what to say. I really don't even know what to say. It's he's so cute. Oh my gosh. So, like, whenever I spiritually look at Cody, he gets me so spiritually aroused, and it's like he doesn't even have a scalp. Like, he looks like a divine Vin Diesel. And sometimes I just spiritually stare at him, and I just look at him and I go, "Vin, is that you?" And he's like, "No, I'm Cody." And I'm like, "Whoa. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. I don't even know what to say. Let's get into some of the Karmelo Anthony stuff. So you guys know, again, we're not covering the whole Karmelo Anthony case. I'll do a quick overview again of everything that happened, but really what I want to show you guys is the backlash, the outcome. So, Karmelo Anthony, African-American kid, high school, track meet. There was a rain delay, and he then goes under the tent of an opposing high school. Of that opposing high school, there are two brothers, one of which is Austin Metcalf, who eventually addresses Karmelo Anthony after being asked 15 times to leave their tent. He then proceeds, according to the testimony presented at the court during the sentencing that I read, he called the other school, everyone in it, bitches, pussies, that they can't do anything to him, that they're afraid, and they better not try to move him or watch what's going to happen. He then gets gently shoved by Austin Metcalf on the shoulder, of which Karmelo Anthony then sits down in a chair, pulls a knife out of his backpack, and stabs him in the heart and kills him right there on the scene. Now, if you remember, the Karmelo Anthony family, his parents, then began to raise money immediately, raising almost $1 million. And from what I heard, they ended up getting some of that money. I think the GoFundMe was now refunded after the sentencing. But somehow they raised enough money that the family bought a new car, they bought a new house, they moved to a new place, and all that different stuff. So, anyways, this occurs, and this past trial, which it seemed like Jenny and I were traveling, so I was not following it. The trial happens. He gets sentenced, I believe, to 35 years for murder, which he did. And there's really no excuse for what the events that transpired. One, he was the obstinate one, going to an opposing tent, refusing to leave, calling people names, and then being stabbed. Or no, then him stabbing and killing another person. So you would think that this would be understood by both the black and white community as something that we need to try to get over. We don't need this type of conflict, and certainly Karmelo Anthony's actions should be called out and condemned. That is not what has happened. That is not what has happened at all. Unfortunately, what has happened is it seems like Black Twitter, Black X, the majority of African-American celebrities that I've seen are claiming that somehow the white jury in Frisco, Texas was racially motivated to sentence Karmelo Anthony despite all the evidence and all the witnesses, both on the high school that Austin Metcalf went to and also the high school that Karmelo Anthony went to. Fellow African-American kids who watched the incident described the same thing of him killing Austin Metcalf. But what we get in return is essentially rhetoric for the escalation of racial tension between us all. So I'm going to play a few videos, and we're going to end with a video by Jeff Metcalf, the father of Austin Metcalf, who he has been under a gag order for at least a year and a half. Wasn't this incident like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago? And so he was not able to speak on things. He was not able to talk about his interactions with Karmelo Anthony's parents or anything like that. And he essentially lets loose. We're going to get to that here in a few. But first, I just want to show you some of the behavior and the reaction to actual justice, right? This isn't social justice. This isn't using critical race theory to come to sort of equitable solution due to past historical instances. This is a clear-cut case of one kid killed another kid in a totally unjustified way, and yet people are so upset that he's being held accountable. This is a video right here of his mother. This is Karmelo Anthony, or his grandmother, riles up the crowd by repeatedly screaming racist, biased, prejudiced as she left the courthouse. They sent a message that a white person can hit a black boy and get away with it. They can do whatever the F they want. First of all, Austin Metcalf did not hit Karmelo Anthony. They're claiming, I saw one group of black people claiming that Austin Metcalf posted a photo of AR-15 rifles in his bedroom or his car or something, and told that if the monkeys come and mess with him at this track meet, this is what they're going to get. Never existed. Doesn't exist. It's not real. Don't know what you're talking about. So it wasn't even brought up in the courtroom because obviously the defense attorney, if that was true, they would present that in court. It was never presented because it never happened. So, the Post is talking about how this entire family is disgusting. One of the most disgusting things about it is his parents didn't even go to the hearing, the sentencing, the trial. They weren't even there. So imagine, I don't even know how old Karmelo is. I would imagine he has to be younger than 20 because this was in high school. So he's either, at most 20, if not 19, 18 years old. He's getting ready to go face the majority of his adult life in prison. His parents raised money on behalf of this incident, believing that it was all racially motivated and the white boy deserved it. And they don't even go to his trial. How pathetic is that? Now, this is his grandmother. If you didn't hear, she says, white boys can hit black boys and get away with it. I don't know where you're getting that. In fact, if you live in America in 2026, it's quite the opposite. But and so anyways, it's hard to hear, but it goes on. You hear the same phrase repeated over and over and over. Here's, Charleston White. I'm not even going to play Charleston White's video because it's so disgusting, but he starts calling the father of Austin Metcalf the N-word, calling him a hard R, calling him racist, basically saying that he's going to fund Karmelo Anthony's family and his court cost and stuff like this because this is about white racism against blacks. And all. It's like, I don't even know where they're getting that. Anyways, his tirade is filled with profanity and vulgarity, so we're going to avoid that. This is rapper Boosie Badass, what a wonderful name, revealed that he is donating $500,000 to Karmelo Anthony and his family after he was charged with murdering 17-year-old Austin Metcalf and sentenced to 35 years in prison. He says, us black people need to stick together and support this brother. I got him $500K for him. Now, again, I don't understand how Karmelo Anthony has become some type of cultural icon and hero for blacks. And it's almost like George Floyd. George Floyd was a drug addict. He was a convict. He broke into a woman's house and held her hostage while she was pregnant, pointing the gun at her belly, claiming he's going to kill both her and the baby. He was high on fentanyl and had fraudulent money, fake money that he was trying to get cashed when he was arrested and the whole George Floyd thing happened. And he becomes an icon, serial criminal, convict, former porn star, all this different stuff regarding George Floyd. This kid, and again, it's really unfortunate that he's lost his life. Obviously, Austin Metcalf, but I mean, he deserves to be in prison. That's no question. But I mean, his life is over now. He made a very bad decision, probably fueled by, again, African-American culture, rap music, all this different stuff. He chose to be confrontational, and now he's going to spend the next 35 years in a prison cell. So here is Boosie Badass talking about how the blacks need to rally around this particular kid, which again makes very little sense. You would think that they would just agree that this is the type of behavior that is not condoned and this is not helpful. But somehow they are justifying what he did.
It's quiet around this bitch today. I just ate some Boosie noodles, nigga. Can't stop eating them motherfuckers. It rain every day out here, bro. Like, every fucking day, bro.
Meanwhile, this guy has hundreds of thousands of dollars around his neck. Jewelry flaunts about how much money he has, his mansion, his cars. And yet he's being oppressed by America every single day. What are you talking about, dude? What are you talking? I can't hardly listen to them talk, so we're going to move forward. Makes no sense. Here is another example. This was a white kid that was trying to do some reporting at the courthouse and just asking people to explain the situation. Look how they act.
All right, so I've heard a lot about justice for Karmelo, right?
Yeah. Justice for Karmelo. I would have stabbed that nigga too. Why he don't go? Hey, I would have did it to him. I promise I would have.
If you can't understand, the black guy comes up, says, I would have stabbed him too.
I did it to him.
But why?
I would have did it to him and his brother.
Okay, but for what reason?
Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Them little boys came looking for trouble.
Okay.
You come looking for trouble, you don't know what fucking outcome going.
Sure.
You don't know outcome. You rob a bank, you don't know if you're gonna get the money.
Wait, somebody robbed a bank?
Hold on, listen real quick.
Man, you wanna play dumb, man.
No, I'm trying.
No.
So, again, let me translate for you guys. He says that the Metcalf boys were looking for trouble. Now, remember, the reason why Karmelo Anthony was sentenced is because he came to their tent during a rain delay for no reason, was asked 15 times to leave and refused, and then insulted everybody there and was clearly antagonizing them and trying to provoke some type of violent response, of which then he killed Austin Metcalf. I don't know what he's talking about, how the kids provoked them. The kids were like, what?
No, I want to hear. Yeah. Let's talk about it. All right.
You can record it, motherfucker.
Yeah. No, I want to.
You rob a bank,
insight,
right? You rob a bank, right? You might get the money. You might go to jail. You might be dead, right?
Right.
You fuck with the wrong motherfucker. It's the same way. Them boys were looking for trouble. You know what happened? He got stabbed and he died. Because he went looking for trouble. That's self-defense, motherfucker. So if you can't see that between your fucking little ass brain, motherfucker.
All right.
Do I have to tell you? I have to whisper to you?
So.
You want me to whisper it to you?
No, I just.
You want me to whisper it to you, motherfucker?
You can talk in.
You want me to whisper it to you?
Well, you're yelling right now.
All right, then, bitch.
You know,
play with somebody else, nigga. I'm a real gangster. Play with somebody else.
I'm just trying to get.
See, play with somebody else. I'm a real gangster. I don't think that is going to help the cultural conflict of which this is all indicative of. Yeah, it's perpetual victimhood is crazy. They're always the victim. And that's where it's amazing that the community is not just taking accountability, saying, look, you know, it's unfortunate what happened, but what he did was not right. But the videos just go on and on and on of people being upset. This is an African, an Ethiopian man holding up a sign that says White Lives Matter, supporting Austin Metcalf. Look how the others respond to him.
I'm from Africa. I'm blacker than all of you. By far, actually. So you're from the motherland. Born in Africa. Hold on. All right, I'm going to tell y'all something real quick.
And just notice how articulate the man from Ethiopia is. Notice how he can convey a full thought. He can state a complete sentence. Yeah, there's a bit of a difference here. And so the people go on and start yelling at him, claiming he's an Uncle Tom. He's not really black. He needs to go back to Africa. He doesn't relate to the plight of African Americans. He shouldn't have an opinion in this. And it goes on and on that way. And there's been a trend where people walk up to random white people. This is in Tampa, Florida. The trial happened in Frisco, Texas. And they use it as a pretext to just assault random white people. Now, this guy, he might be homeless. I don't know what's his situation, but she, for some reason, thinks she's allowed, because of Karmelo Anthony's sentencing, to just walk up and smack him.
Hey, bro. Weren't you on motherfucking jury selection?
Motherfucking bitch.
Weren't you on jury selection?
No, I wasn't.
Yes, you was.
No, I wasn't.
Yes, you was.
No, I wasn't.
Yes, you was.
No, I wasn't.
Yes, the hell you was.
Obviously, he wasn't. It's not even in the same state. This is another example of the same thing happening also in Florida.
Hey, wasn't you on jury selection?
No, he wasn't. Man. No, he wasn't. Seriously. No, he wasn't. He wasn't.
He was on jury selection.
No, he's a vet. He's a vet, dude. He's a vet. He's a vet. He ain't been on jury selection.
Fuck her. I ain't worried about that.
Fuck you.
You on jury? Wasn't you on jury?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't.
You on jury selection? You was on jury selection?
So I don't think that's going to do anything to help mend the cultural differences here. Again, and this is the reaction of this white man after the trial. He just stood outside. He wasn't even provoking, wasn't saying much. He just stood there. Look at the reaction.
I'm dancing. You ain't gonna do shit. 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 I'm dancing.
And you can see the phenomenon that's referred to as black looping. So this is a phrase to describe when they start saying the same thing over and over. You'll see it in the police videos when they have body cam footage and they pull people over, is they won't answer a question. It's almost like you can't interact with them. They'll just do what's called black looping, and they'll state the same phrase over and over and over and over and over again. And that's essentially what you saw here. Here's another woman.
What do you want us to do at this point? What? I'm lost for it. I don't know what to do. I got 5 boys. I don't know what. I ain't got nothing to tell them no more. You can't walk away no more.
Rest in peace, Trayvon Martin. Let me ask you this right now. I hear
you have 5 boys. You don't know what. Tell them not to kill anybody. Tell them not to murder someone. That would be useful. That'd be good parenting. Here's another video.
I don't have an opinion. I don't have an opinion here.
Just what Karmelo was doing. I'm glad you just said that. That's what Karmelo was doing. Protecting his
I don't know how Karmelo was protecting himself when he's the one that went there uninvited. So, anyways, this is actually really good. This is Austin Metcalf's father speaking out for the first time because his gag order is off. Now, I will say, if you guys have children listening, you may want to listen. There is some profanity. There is curse words in this. He does drop the F-bomb. But this is very insightful to get the perspective from Austin Metcalf's father, who has been silent for most of the events that transpired. So check this out.
Anthony, Kayla, you're cowards. You wouldn't even show up for your son's sentencing or victim statement impacts. You abandoned your kid. You left him there. I guess he's no more use to you because you can't get any more GoFundMe money or GoSendGo money. You are grifters. You should be ashamed of yourself. You raised that child. And I swear to God, CPS to show them check on those other 3 that you still have. You never once admitted or took accountability. You tried to play victim. The real victim is the one who died, not the one who shoved a knife in his chest. I come to pray with you and show the world we can close the gap of this unbelievable racial divide. And what'd you do? You widen the gap even further. You hire a convicted, baby-shaking felon who's only in it for the money, who gives you bad advice, kicks me out of a press conference. Oh, funny, I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be, but I left when asked. I didn't stab anyone. And then you proceeded to gaslight me with your convicted felon, quote, advocate? Minister? Minister of what? Minister irrelevant? Minister of bullshit? How about minister fuck you? Y'all think I'm a saint? I'm no saint. I'm as human as you. I have emotions. Just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean I don't sin, because I don't walk on water and I don't turn into wine. And anybody else can, step up. Don't become kicking rocks in my backyard. Look in your own. The display of adults own the internet. If your children saw how you acted, would you be proud? Or is that what you teach them? Do you teach them that racism is okay? Do you teach them, do you program your kids to hate, to kill? From day one, I said this was never about race. Please don't make it about race and don't politicize it. And what did you do? You chose both. The race card, black fatigue, it's real. I'm sorry. You have embarrassed your own culture and race. Don't get me wrong, we got white people that embarrass the shit out of me too. But you guys, you got a patent on that shit. And the only people that's going to change it are you. Don't blame the white person because we can't change it. But you're going to blame the white person for every fucking thing else. I'm going to tell you right now. Charleston White, you think you're funny? We'll see who's laughing. Drew Anthony, you're a pussy and a coward, and you raised one. Kayla, you drunk bitch. What'd you do to that boy to make him stab somebody? My God, what kind of mother are you? Hey, Kevin Hayes, you fucking liar. Day after it happened, how many lies did you sit and type up on your keyboard, you big keyboard warrior? You're a big tough man. You still live in Baton Rouge? Remember you said you'd come to Frisco, buddy? You're supposed to find me. I told you we could sit down and talk. That's all you do. Talk, Mr. Squeaky Clean. You're the only one in your family without a damn record. I guess that's something to brag about in your culture. You people hang your hat on the dumbest shit I've ever seen. Let me make one up. Y'all can let me make something racist up so y'all can go viral. I got a new name for Mello, okay? Because he was such this little boy y'all were trying to portray. How about Watermelon Felon? How's that one strike you? I hope he enjoyed his first night in that cell last night. Because he's going to have many nights to think about what the fuck he did. So I don't carry the hate and the anger. How poetic justice is served. You just do a big softball and knock it out of the park. Thank you for making it so easy for me. So you can live with your lie if you want to. But my truth is forever. Just like the fact your son is a convict and a killer. Forever. Forever is a long time. What's your master plan, Mr. Anthony? To use your son as income and soak up as much money playing victim to line your pockets and then abandon him when he's at sentencing or victim impact? You just left him up there by himself? Amazing. Amazing. What about you, Drew? What kind of father are you? You want to talk about what kind of father? All right, let's talk about what kind of father you are. Let's talk about your arrest. Let's talk about your warrants. Oh, was it drugs? Coke? You did? Tell me some other shit. Let's pull it up. Because I'm welcome every one of you to pull up my criminal history. Someone who tried to make up some bullshit saying I'm a sexual assault person, guess what? If you're convicted of sexual assault in Texas, you have to register. Please check the registry. Please check my background in criminal history. It's not there.
And so one of a podcaster who I'm not familiar with, Larry Reed, calls for mass exodus of Black Americans from the U.S. to Africa in response to Karmelo Anthony verdict. Now, if you guys know who Akon is, the musician He's from Africa. Akon, one of his life goals is to get African Americans to move back to the homeland. So there is precedent, and some of the Africans are trying to get African Americans to come back. But this is this prominent podcaster who I'm not familiar with, never seen his content before, stating exactly that.
And I want you to begin to think about this America and the white people problem that we have. I'm going to make a statement. We know that Martin Luther King, the beginning of his work was all about integration. We do know that later on that did change. Integration has had great benefits. I think now, unless you must stay in America, unless you are supposed to be in the USA. Otherwise, if you're black, integration has had great benefits. I'm telling you, and I'm saying this as a collective, let's drain this place of its benefits and make our mass exodus and go home and build. I repeat, integration has had great benefits, black people. For some of us. Let's drain this place of its benefits and make our mass exodus and go home and build.
So I believe he's claiming to take your welfare money and your resources and go back to Africa. I don't know how successful that would be, but hey, if that's where they feel like they'll be able to live more comfortably, then so be it. Then so be it.
See, civil rights did not make white people that are infected with whiteness stop being racist.
Infected with whiteness. Being white is a disease, apparently.
They still raised racist children that run this country to this day.
I'm not aware of any children running this country today, and I'm certainly not aware of a system that is privileging white people in any facet of American society in 2026. Please let me know where a heterosexual white Christian man finds privilege in America, because every single institutional facet is in opposition to us. Please let us know.
The Civil Rights Act just made social discrimination federally illegal in key areas of American life, housing, voting, and such. It changed what was lawful, what was punishable, and what rights black Americans could legally demand and defend.
Okay. So I can't listen to him anymore. He speaks so slow. He says really nothing, and yet is so firm in his belief. Another thing that I was going to mention here quickly is Disclosure Day. Disclosure Day, the new film by Steven Spielberg, who is claiming that his new film about Disclosure Day is going to shake up people's faiths. Now, in another interview, he specifically noted Christians. So for some reason, his movie is going to affect Christians. Now, the few people that I've seen review the film who saw it have stated that it's explicitly painting aliens in a very positive light as basically part of the post-World War II narrative as our guardians, that we must look up to the extraterrestrials to save us from ourselves, and that, my virtue of loving everything and being okay with everything is the only thing that's going to save us. And so entirely propagandistic. And it's known that he's working with the U.S. government. I have a clip, I think I included it here, where he acts as if, no, I don't have it. Dang. Well, I have another clip where he is asked about the movie. It looks like he's at some premiere, some celebration in Hollywood. And he's like, I'll tell you what, it's just so crazy that, you know, me and the co-director started working on this film in 2023. And all of a sudden, it's like the Pentagon starts releasing some of the photos and the images and videos about UFOs and alien spacecraft. It's just a total coincidence that all this stuff just lined up with the release of disclosure. No, stop the gaslighting. Stop the stop. We know what you guys are up to. It's obvious as hell. And so Steven Spielberg says his new movie Disclosure Day about aliens will have Christians and people of faith second guessing their own religion. Spielberg says the movie will take the position of the church. Is God our God only on this planet, or is God a God of every system where there's civilization? And here's him.
This truth were just known overnight. If the government announced, yes, we have been keeping this from you since 1947, that would mess up a lot of people.
No,
and the movie.
No, it wouldn't. I don't think it'd change anybody's day-to-day life. I don't think it really would have that big of an impact if they told us the truth that it's all fake.
He also takes the position of the church. What does this do to the fundamental beliefs that many of us have? And, you know, is God our God only on this planet, or is God a God for every system where there's civilization, intelligent life, and even developing life?
And so, again, we went over the disclosure stuff. Total nothing burger. Nothing. Well, today at noon, this came out, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, did you see the new UFO video? Did you see it? This is it, guys. And this is 4K. I saw people say, finally they released a high-definition video. It's of an orb. It's of an orb. This is supposed to convince you that extraterrestrials are here and they're going to save you. This is it, guys. It's a color orb that flashes and then reemerges. And then there's 3 little dots that go from it. This is it. This is the latest disclosure that was released today by the Pentagon that everyone's up in arms about. Absolutely a nothing burger. Okay, have you guys been following the Albania stuff? This is actually very, very interesting. And after this, we'll get into a lot of the Israel stuff, because I have a whole window just on Israel. So I'll play the video. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump were borrowing a boat from the Rothschilds, or with the Rothschilds. It's not entirely clear. And according to Ivanka, they jumped from the boat and they discovered an island in the Mediterranean. No, you didn't discover it. It's right off the shore of Albania. You didn't discover anything. It's been there. It's a protected island. And for some reason, you know, Albanians for the last year and a half, this isn't new. The last year and a half, they've been hearing about Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump trying to get this island. Well, unfortunately, the Albanian government ended up agreeing. Now, this luxury resort is essentially just for billionaires. And it's going to be replete with underground tunnels, bunkers, all types of stuff. And it's endangering the flamingos of the wildlife preserve that's right next to it, as I told you about. And in fact, the Germans stopped building the airport. They were released from the project because they cited ecological violations or concerns. So Albania then finds out that they're going to take essentially over their island. And meanwhile, the infrastructure in Albania is total crap. So the Albanian government agreed to build new water piping and water systems for this island. Meanwhile, the people right next to the shore have intermittent water usage. Their infrastructure is so shoddy that they can't even have water on a consistent basis. And so they protest in the tens of thousands. as I'll show you, they even burn one of the representatives' house down. And so here is a few clips regarding this incident with Albania.
Thousands took to the streets of Albania's capital this week with a message for their prime minister.
Albania is not for sale.
They're demanding authorities stop the construction of a $1.4 billion luxury coastal resort backed by Jared Kushner's investment firm, Affinity Partners.
It will be basically another city.
Protesters went to the site of the proposed development today, which sits on the country's Adriatic coast and wildlife reserve, home to seals, nesting sea turtles, and flocks of flamingos. In a podcast earlier this week, Ivanka Trump discussed how she and her husband stumbled upon the area's untouched beauty while on a friend's boat.
We swam to the islands, we went on a hike, barefoot all the way up to the top, and we were just captivated.
Albania's prime minister insists the project will transform tourism and the country's economy.
The aim is to make something unique that will be amazing for Albanians, but will be also a gift of Albania to all of you in Europe.
The prime minister says under his watch, this project will move forward. Jurica, Albania's national anti-corruption agency, says it has opened up an investigation into the luxury project.
And so eventually the Albanians, they protest. They're able to get this project shut down. So this article right here, Albanian protests over Kushner-linked resort project grow into anti-government rallies. This was an article from today and talks about how the thousands of people in the streets have moved because apparently this project is now on pause. And even I think the Kushner representatives even stated that. But now they're still protesting because they're upset with the fact that their government is trying to take what is rightfully theirs and give it to people like this guy, Jared Kushner.
On a vacation after we left government in the summer of 2021, we were on our friend Nat Rothschild's boat. We got picked up in Montenegro, and then we started sailing over to Corfu, and we spent a couple days in Albania. One of the nights there, Prime Minister Rama came to the boat. I had not met him when I was in government. But I was very, very impressed with his vision for what he wanted to do with Albania. I really didn't know anything about the country. I didn't understand the history, and the darkness of the history with the communism and the terrible leadership actually led to it being fully undeveloped as a nation. But Eddie came in. He has one of the cool things I was attracted to is the fact that he seemed like a very...
He does, doesn't he? He looks like a totally emotionless NPC. He looks like some billionaire NPC. He looks dead behind his eyes. There's no charisma. There's no life energy. There's certainly no masculinity. I mean, I think if Jim Bob's here, I mean, he will mock Jared Kushner regarding his shoulders. I think Jim Bob found one of the shoulders that he can absolutely mog on. Look at this little guy. He looks like he's in a teenage body.
A very skilled politician, is a very strong and smart leader, but also the fact that he was an artist. I thought it would be very cool to see what a country really led and built by an artist could be, somebody with amazing taste and great creativity. And so I was just intrigued by it. And then before we went to Corfu, we stopped in Butrent, which was also a spectacular site, and just really felt to me like it showed the potential of the country. So much amazing beauty, the water.
Potential of the country. How are you helping the country, Jared? Didn't you just get a sweetheart deal to essentially steal one of their islands to build a resort that's specifically for billionaires? How exactly does that help the Albanians? How does divesting natural resources like water to your little billionaire island, your little billionaire play place, how does that help the Albanians and contribute to the country due to the horrific nature of communism? What are you talking about, dude? You are the vulture. That's why the people hate you, right? And here's the irony. This is Ivanka Trump talking about it while the Albanians surged the island because Israelis actually had like little temporary housing there. I'll show you. And they begin destroying it. And they tell the Israelis, you need to go. Here's a video right here. these little buildings are being set up on the island, and just so happens they're all Israeli. This is how the Albanians respond. Seems appropriate to me. Here you can see this. You can see the size of the protest, and they're chanting, "Israel, go away. Our land is not for sale." And then here's Ivanka Trump talking about it, while you can see the police trying to stop the protesters during the protest of, again, the construction of their island.
The Mediterranean, it's massive in scale.
I think that's an understatement. Can you explain?
Yes, it is.
There's no power on this island. You're building everything from scratch. Correct.
Well, it's an unbelievable, beautiful 1,400 hectare private island in the middle of the Mediterranean. For me, despite the scale of it, we not only the island, but we have 5 miles of beachfront directly across from the island. This beautiful peninsula with a lagoon on one side, the ocean on the other. Beautiful white sand beaches. For me, it feels more like a challenge than anything else. The culmination of all.
A challenge. What challenge for Ivanka could it be? She has all the money in the world. All she has to do is tell them to build it. What challenge? What is she going to be, the stonemason? Is she going to be laying the plumbing? What is she talking about? A challenge. The only challenge is that you stole it from the Albanians and they fought back. That's the challenge.
All of my experience in real estate, all of my travel, a lot of reflection on how I want to live, how I think people increasingly are wanting to live, and trying to really build something that's a tangible manifestation of that.
Yeah, right. So luckily, as I said, as of now, that plan is no longer going forward. And here is the Albanians going after the prime minister's house. Again, seems like an appropriate response when the government won't listen. The government claims to be democratic, and they're selling your land to billionaires for billionaires. Now, there's a great account on X, if you guys don't follow it. It's called the Babylon BB, and it's basically a parody of the Babylon Bee, but actually makes more funny and accurate jokes. And this was the one that they shared. Jared and Ivanka warned Trump that Albania is just 3 weeks away from a nuclear weapon. All right, next story. I'm not going to get too deep into it. In fact, we're not even going to watch all this video, but something that happened while I was gone was the stabbing and killing of Henry Nowak. I don't know if you guys saw, he was an 18-year-old in the UK who came across a Sikh. And if you don't know, Sikhism is a religion out of the Punjab, northern India. They're Punjabi. They speak Punjabi. And Sikhism is really a blending of Hinduism and Islam together. And Guru Nanak and the whole faith began that the Sikhs, during the intense rivalry between Hindus and Muslims all the way back to the Mughal Empire, they're killing each other, they're bloodthirsty, they're fighting, and the Sikhs then would protect people who are not interested in participating. And it was basically like a middle way between both faiths. Now, I'm not saying that's what Sikhs think of their faith, but in many ways, that's what it is. And they have these 5 Ks that every Sikh man must have. I can't recount all 5 Ks, but it's like a bracelet, it's the hair, it's a comb. One of them is called a kirpan, and it's a sword. And it has to do with Sikhism's identity, is that they really are a sort of warrior. The way they would describe it is like they're peaceful warriors. Well, Sikhs in America generally don't cause too much trouble. I grew up around a lot of Sikhs. And in the UK recently, one of these Sikhs stabbed a British kid to death. what we now know based on security camera footage and testimony is that Henry Nowak and his brother, just like Austin Metcalf, were walking home at night in somewhere in the UK. I want to say London, but I'm not positive. I don't want to say that. In the UK, somewhere in the UK. And Henry comments to one of the Sikh kids that he has this huge blade, which is technically banned and illegal in the UK, and says, you know, what's up with your blade? And he responds by saying, I'm a bad man, and then proceeds to stab him 8 times with it. And then, because he freaks out on the fact that he just stabbed an innocent guy 8 times, calls the police himself, who he is also with his brother. The Sikh guy is with his brother, calls the police and claims that a white British guy walked up to him saying racist things and he had to stab him to defend himself. The police then show up and begin arresting Henry Nowak, who on the body cam footage, you can see the total dismissiveness, totally dismissive, the UK police towards the kid who's saying, I've been stabbed, I'm dying, I've been stabbed. And then they roll him over on his stomach to arrest him when he did not say anything racist. He was not in fault in any way, and ends up dying and suffocating from his own wounds in police custody. Caused a huge outrage. Nobody in the Western media would cover it. I mean, really on X, it was one of the bigger things. I had not been following news, so I'm coming up with a lot of this stuff the last few days since I've been home, the last couple days, 2 days. And anyways, it caused massive outrage, protests, and is very indicative of the general way in which Western culture is going. Well, right after that, then we get this guy, a Sudanese immigrant holding down an Irishman in Northern Ireland, stabbing his face and neck, and then begins to try to behead him in public while people are watching. I'm not even going to show you the rest of the footage. It's so disturbing. And I don't want the stream to get taken down. But here's a little overview of what happened. The horrific video shows a black African from Sudan, a migrant stabbing a white British man, Northern Ireland, you know, is it Britain? Are they Irish? Okay. In the face and the neck multiple times while he lies on the street. The knifeman screams in an unknown foreign language as he attempts to behead the victim. Bystanders were slow to react, but eventually started hitting and kicking the terrorist in the head until police arrived. The victims were rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries and remains in critical condition. UK police have refused to release the attacker's identity, nationality, or immigration status despite the graphic footage going viral. This has triggered massive outrage over a 2-tier policing, mass migration failures in Keir Starmer's Labour government, which is now pushing digital IDs and anti-free speech online censorship. Earlier today, Labour got hit with 4 separate community notes for trying to use their under-16 social media ban to install spyware on British phones. Massive protests are being planned across Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England. And these protests, it's basically the Irish going around and letting the government know, because just like everywhere else, they won't listen to the people. All the Irish people are saying they're done with the migrant centers. And God bless the Irish, because they're one of the few groups that are actually burning down the migrant centers. They're actually doing the thing that needs to be done because the government won't listen. And so here's a little bit of an insight into what's going on regarding the riots and the frustration of the Irish people.
Growing across the pond in Northern Ireland. Last night, hundreds of masked Irishmen rioted across the city of Belfast, burning buses, torching cars, and setting homes on fire. The Irish haven't been this uppity in decades. So how did it start? 48 hours ago, an African national was charged with attempted murder of an Irishman. He was almost beheaded. The barbaric attack caught on camera. Witnesses were heard crying, "He's trying to cut his head off. He's slicing his head off." This crazed man from Sudan pinned his victim to the ground and was slashing in every direction. Stephen Ogilvie had deep knife wounds in his head, face, and back. He even lost his eye. Somehow he's still alive, but in a coma. But who was the butcher? His name's Hadi Oladid, not an Irish lad. He's 30 years old and went from Sudan to Paris before he flew into Dublin and took a bus into Belfast back in 2023. He applied for asylum and the kingdom gave him refugee status. Police say the Belfast butcher wasn't in any security database. He was unknown. Now, when this nut was arrested, he told cops, quote, "I've killed someone. I don't know if they're dead." This animal was taken to the hospital, too, where he threatened to slash another Irishman, telling them, "I'll kill you." This guy went to court, couldn't even speak English. The people have had it.
They're not listening. The political class are not listening. These people who are coming over here illegally, they're rapists, terrorists. They're coming over here. It's literally like putting a wolf in a sheep field. You are giving them a target-rich environment. You haven't vetted them. You've done nothing. All you've done is dump them in a place where they can wreak havoc. Where they come from, guess what? There's no law. If they can do literally whatever they like, well, guess what? What goes round comes round. And I think the political class have got a very, very, very big smack on the nose coming.
One reporter asked an Irish politician, "How many more years of open borders can we take?" The minister said, "We just have to be more inclusive."
Fake news, and on the day that's in it, totally inappropriate. I don't know any country that has open borders. I believe in an immigration system that is fair and managed and enforceable and compassionate and human rights compliant, but that is not the debate for today. The debate today is about our society, about our inclusive society, our welcoming society.
Human rights compliant.
So migrants create mass terror, and the response is we need a more compassionate migration system. What? This is why you can't. This is why we cannot be led by women. We cannot be led by women. It's really our own judgment that is occurring.
The real threat, she says, isn't the African migrant trying to behead the Irish. It's the Irish reaction.
It is thuggery, plain and simple. The attack in North Belfast was heinous and it was absolutely wrong. But what we're now witnessing is that attack being exploited by dangerous and reckless people to target innocent people who had absolutely nothing to do with it.
The United Kingdom is at a tipping point with migrant crime. In December, an 18-year-old Englishman was sliced to death by an Indian. Henry Novak, a student, was out with his friends one night when he noticed the guy was carrying an 8-inch blade. The teen asks, "What's with the blade?" The Indian says, "I'm a bad man," and then stabbed Novak over and over, including a fatal wound to the chest. Cops showed up and the Indian with the sword said he was being a racist. Guess who cops handcuffed? The white kid bleeding out.
What's your name, mate? Huh? Has anyone been hurt other than him?
Yeah, me. He's grabbed my brother. He's took my turban off, started grabbing my head.
Are you injured?
He took his turban. Anybody else? This kid's been stabbed 8 times. Is there anyone else that's hurt besides him? Yeah, they took my turban. He didn't take his turban off. He took his own damn turban off. Oh, anybody else been hurt? Yeah, they grabbed my turban. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I've got swollen eye, a little bruise.
Alright, just step back a little bit for me. Right, let's get you out of there, shall we? What's happened to you, alright? You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? I don't think you have, mate. Hand? Put the hand in the cuff, mate.
Novak died at the scene. Cops just let him bleed to death while they put his hands behind his back. In the UK, it is illegal to carry knives, but there's a religious exemption. The Sikh Indians walk around with a kirpan. It's a ceremonial knife that can be up to a foot long. It's basically a dagger. They've used them historically as a weapon, not as a letter opener. J.D. Vance responded to the attack saying this: Henry Novak died the same way a civilization dies, abandoned, handcuffed by authorities who neither trusted nor cared for him, and accused of hate crimes he did not commit. He should still be alive today, and he would be if the last few generations of European elites had stood their ground against the politics of self-hatred and the mass invasion of migrants. Now, when the body cam dropped, protesters lit up the streets of Southampton. And now tonight, more protests in Belfast. Police were just seen using water cannons to disperse the crowd.
So, rightful outrage in Ireland as the problems with Europe just seem to continue forward. Okay, now we're going to be getting into all the latest stuff regarding Israel. I got a whole tab of windows for this one. This was just my attempt at actually catching up with everything that I had missed in the last couple weeks because, as I mentioned, me and Jenny have been traveling. I had not been following anything online. And so we're going to dive into all this stuff. But before we do, let me catch up with the chat, guys. We need 8 more super chats to help me reach the 20 super chat goal today, guys. We just need 8 more of you generous people. Let me see what has come in since. Melly throws in 5, says, Boomer at church said one of the prophecies in the Bible is oh my gosh. What church do you go to, Melly? Are you going to an Orthodox church? Because there's no way someone can say that at an Orthodox church. Unbelievable. Siaba, member for 9 months. Shout out to you, brother. He says, hey, free highlight chat. Siaba Lee on Musk site. And MFZ throws in 10, says, Pope is ticked. Reject modernity and become ortho. Absolutely. Do not become Catholic. Becoming Catholic does not solve any of your problems. If you think that society is falling apart, this or that, it's not going to help you. Siaba gifted 5 Total Crew memberships. Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate that. And MFZ also gifted 5 Total Crew memberships. Thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate that support, guys. And, Bryce Gasper throws in a generous $100 super chat. Thank you so much, my man. He says, behind by 30 minutes, but here is something for the goal. Thank you so much for that generous support. Really appreciate it. Nope Man throws in 5, says, Norman invasion stream? My maternal family comes from that region. Yeah, my paternal family has some Norman ancestry. At least that's where the surname Harry, Harry, comes from my research. So, again, if we were able to reach, I would love to do another community-sponsored stream. Josiah Elleron throws in 10. Thank you so much, Josiah. We missed you at Montanica, my man. He says, adding to the goal, brother. Well, thank you so much, Josiah. Hopefully, next event, you're able to make it. I know you're under the weather, but God bless you. Melly throws in 2 more, says, a Jew produces and creates Jay-Z degen music. That is absolutely the case. And Josiah, been a member for 22 months. Thank you so much, brother. He says, if you had a drinking game for how many times these guys use the word you'd be drunk in 5 minutes. Yeah, no joke. Melly, thank you so much, Melly, for the support today. She throws another 5, says, I was almost killed by a group of banshees during the George Floyd era. Was minding my own business and almost killed for existing. Fortunately, I'm not surprised. Thank God they didn't follow through. And Melly said my stereo is typing. She must be doing voice to text. Backseat Sauceman throws in 2, says, I'm Yakub, and I approve. That must be going over the Karmelo Anthony stuff. And Melly, Total Crew member for 12 months. Thank you so much, sister. She says, these people want to destroy everything beautiful. Indeed. And Orthodoxy throws in a generous 20. Thank you so much. He says, you don't have to read this out loud. Well, I am. We white people globally are being exterminated. That is true. I actually did a video on the extermination of white people, I think, beginning of this year. Everyone needs to wake up and come together if we are to survive. The numbers don't lie. I mean, European identity is on a massive decline right now. At one point, I believe whites We're 30% of global population. We're down to roughly 8 to 12%. So, yeah, numbers don't lie, and it's not looking promising. Let me just double check. Before we dive in all the Israel stuff, let me just double check Dono Chat and Streamlabs real quick. And it looks like we are caught up. So, thank you all. We need 7 more to reach our 20 Super Chat goal. If you appreciate this type of content, and also, if you want to sponsor a stream, please do so. I am totally open for sponsored streams, so I'm going to be doing some streams of my own volition here. The next one's going to be on Marshall McLuhan, somebody that all of you should be familiar with, especially in the 21st century. But we're going to be doing a deep dive into Marshall McLuhan and watching some of his content. But if you have a great topic you would like me to dive into, usually it's a day and a half to 2 days of prep, do sponsor a stream. I'd greatly appreciate it. You can do so with this link right here. And I will email you and get back to you on the details of the topic you would like me to present. Okay. With that being said, let's get into some of the Israel stuff. So, your guys' favorite Protestant pastor and U.S. politician, Mike Huckabee, has humiliated himself yet again. He is going on about how we Christians have a moral debt and essentially are, in one way or another, slaves to the Jews because of what they did to the Old Testament. Now, I got 2 videos of Mike Huckabee, and here's the first one. Mike Huckabee says, God Almighty is personally protecting and favoring the modern state of Israel above all other countries. Now, given the genocide, given the lies, given the manipulation, given the blackmail, I can only agree with him. The problem is it's not the Holy Trinity who's watching after Israel. It's the God of this world. And that is the only reason it is successful. Exactly, because the God of this world provides worldly success. That would actually follow. Huckabee says the current population of Israel is the one the Bible mentions as the race that is superior to everyone else. Wow. It's a sort of racial supremacy that's being presented in the name of Judaism by non-Jews. God directly favors and protects it. God Almighty has his hand on the land of Israel. Now check this out.
But above all, it is not diplomatic, it is not economic, it is not political, and it is not even military. And Israel has an amazing military. It is astonishing that a tiny little country of 10 million people outpunches its weight over and over again when it...
Can they do that without the U.S. literally financially supporting it? Can they do it without all the U.S. weapons? Could they just do it if they were like every other nation in the world that was sovereign? I have a feeling they wouldn't be able to.
It is threatened with its existence by those who have 10 times the population, many more times the military budget, and yet it doesn't just survive, it thrives. So is that what the secret is?
No.
And I would say to you, no, it's none of that. The secret is that 3,800 years ago, God told Abraham, I'm going to create a people, and you're it. And I'm going to put you in a place, and this is it. And this is going to be your place, and I'm going to give you a purpose, and you're going to fulfill it. And it doesn't matter who rises up against the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it does not matter how dark sometimes the night may get, because as it says in the Psalms, joy comes in the morning. And we are living in a land that is able to exceed what it should be able to do, whether it's the military, the economy, diplomacy, agriculture, technology. And the reason is none of those things. The reason is because God Almighty put his hand on the land, and because God himself has said, this is how you will know that I am God. And I believe we see it from the Bible.
So for anybody new to my content and struggling to understand why us Eastern Orthodox are explicitly anti-Zionist, it has to do with really basic theology. Everything he referred to regarding the Old Testament has to do with the first covenant. I did a whole stream on what is a Jew. And in that stream, we begin with the concept of Jew from the point of creation of which there is none. We then proceed all the way through Genesis until we get to Abraham. With Abraham is given a promise of a descendant of people. And those essentially become the Israelites because there's 12 different tribes. And during the first temple period, the term referring to those group of people was not Jew. It was the Israelites. And it referred to all 12 tribes. But after the diaspora and the destruction of the first temple, when all these Israelites are in Babylon, it's the Jews or the tribe of Judah who protected the temple. And it is that group of people that had a lot of influence. And when King Cyrus decides to send the Jews back to what we would consider modern day Israel, back to their homeland, he uses the term in which the Babylonians typically referred to these people as Jews, signifying the particular tribe that they're associated with. That's where we're then, from the second temple forward, that's why they're referred to as Jews. Now, once the first covenant is abolished, which is what he should believe if he believes that God incarnated, Mike Huckabee should believe that Christ incarnated and therefore ended the first covenant and established the second covenant, the covenant of Christ. That is why then Christians are the chosen people. There is no Jew and Gentile, and the church is the spiritual Israel. That's why Orthodox Jews don't even support Zionism, because they're not supposed to have a specific location. This is Theodor Herzl. This is all late 19th century stuff on this new understanding of why the Jews need to claim the Holy Land as their own and sort of re-signify the first covenant and then recapitulate those rituals to bring back their Mashiach, their Messiah, which is our Antichrist. And that colors a lot of the historical tensions between Christians and Jews from memoriam, is that what they're anticipating is the opposite of what we're anticipating. Now, what they're anticipating is a precursor for what we're anticipating in regard to the second coming of Christ. And that's why you got all these Christian Zionists that essentially worship Jews in the state of Israel, some as an accelerationist for Christ to come, some believing that they are the chosen people and they don't even need to be Christian. They don't even need to believe in Jesus and they'll be saved just because they have special blood. And that's the group, that's the world that Mike Huckabee's in. Now, here's another video that was making the rounds that I found recently, where U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee insists Christians are spiritually enslaved to a moral debt they owe to the Jewish people forever. He says he can't understand why so many Christians choose not to support Israel. It's probably because we have a historical church, we have a liturgy, we have tradition, and we actually know what Scripture means. So here's Mike Huckabee.
I get asked all the time, because I'm a Christian, and they say, well, why are you so supportive of the Jewish people? I said, you can be Jewish, you don't have to have anything to do with Christians, but you can't be a Christian and not understand that your entire faith is built on the foundation of Judaism.
But that Judaism doesn't exist. For anybody who does not know, the Judaism during the time of Christ, when the second temple was still in existence, before it was destroyed in 70 AD, that religion does not exist. The Jews go in diaspora due to Roman persecution, and you get a couple different Talmuds. And the Talmud is the basis for a new form of Judaism called Rabbinic Judaism. It is not the sacrificial tradition of the temple, of the Old Testament. And this new form of Judaism, in fact, you can literally say it's newer than Christianity. That is the Judaism that exists today. So the Judaism that he's saying Christianity was built upon does not even exist today.
Christians, we look at this as an obligation, a moral debt that we must repay. And therefore, I don't understand anyone who says, I'm a Christian, but I don't really want to support the Jews. Well, how can you do that? But it is not the view of those of us who are what I would call biblical believers that accept that what the scripture says about the Jewish people. In Genesis 12, those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those who curse Israel will be cursed. It gets pretty simple. I say there's a miracle every day in this country. I get asked all.
And these are the people that represent the U.S. This is the, again, to use an Orthodox term, the fronema, the mindset of the entire Trump administration. And as we go through today, it's just very, very clear what's going on. This is a Jewish rabbi, Yosef Mizrachi, stating that the Goyim gets angry. The Jews are in control. They control the money. And says, so who then would control the money? You? Meaning you're not a Jew. You can't be in charge. You compare yourself to the chosen people? It's good for you that they run the country and they run the world and they run the economy. This is from the mouth of a rabbi. I'll let you hear it.
The Goyim gets angry. The Jews in control. The Jews in control. They control the money. So who will control the money? You? You compare yourself to the chosen people. You don't see their blessing by God. It's good for you that they run the country and they run the world and they run economy. The whole world came to destroy the Jews. All the empires, all of them are gone, and the Jews remain always in power. It's unheard of. According to the laws of nature, the Jews should have died already in the first year after they got the Torah, when Amalek already came. They had no army, no weapon. They're in the middle of the desert with their children, and all of a sudden they are being attacked one day after the other. Back then already it was a huge miracle to survive. 3,300 years of pogroms and Holocaust and all kinds of wars and empire coming to Jerusalem to burn us alive. All those empires disappeared, and we are above everybody. Always in power, always we are the head of the world. Imagine the world without us. The world would be 1,000 years more primitive. All the inventions in the world almost all come from Jews, mainly Israelis. Medicine, doctors, surgeons, biggest judges in America, all kinds of designers, architects, artists, musicians, big rabbis, philosophers. Try to imagine the world without the Jews. And the Jews are 0.25% from the population. And the Goyim gets angry. The Jews in control, the Jews in control, they control the money. So who will control the money? You? You compare yourself to the chosen people. You don't see their blessing by God. It's good for you that they run the country and they run the world and they run economy. I want to remind you that the United States was on a point of bankruptcy in 2008. Everything here was about to destroy it. And who saved this country? Ben Shalom Bernanke. He was the chairman of the
Federal Reserve. Yes, the people who took over the U.S. currency, debased the currency from a gold standard, has a printing machine and controls inflation through whatever rates they want to set. Somehow he saved us from the financial crisis of 2008, in which they aided and abetted through the central banks and J.P. Morgan by giving out loans to mortgages that they knew they would never be able to pay back. But somehow we need to be thankful that Jews run the world. Now, again, if I just state what this rabbi says, I'm deemed anti-Semitic. As I told you, I had a longtime supporter of my work in this YouTube channel message me. I saw as soon as I got back from traveling, I thought we were friends. I knew we had a difference of opinion on Israel. He's joined our Logos Academy and our meetings. As I said, it's been probably 2 or 3 years he's been a supporter of my work. And he emails me telling me I can't support you anymore, essentially insinuating I'm anti-Semitic and claiming that the rhetoric that I talk about Israel and Jews online is concerning and not appropriate for the Christian values that he supports. Now, I think I'm pretty timid. I always tell people you cannot attack individuals. You know, you can't hate because of a collective. You can't hate an individual. This is just basic thinking. And yet somehow even people who know me, who have engaged with me, who are Jewish, think that I'm anti-Semitic for stating what the rabbis say by playing the videos that they themselves are saying. I mean, what other group of people can essentially pejoratively condemn you as goyim and then elevate themselves as a racial supremacist group and then validate their monopolistic control in various societies or controlling the central banks as a good thing? Any other group that said that, it would be deemed racist. But they get a pass, and that's what people are upset with. That's what people are tired of. And you can't even speak out against it because it'll get flagged by TOS, by the AI, by the algorithm. That's how you know this is nefarious, is because you cannot even criticize Israel without being attacked through the entire matrix. The entire matrix. And they think that doing this stuff or influencing their power is going to be helpful. See, if you're an Orthodox Christian, one of the first things to know if something is good or evil is it being forced on you? Anything that's being forced cannot fully be from God. Now, obviously, there's good things that can be forced on people, but generally speaking, look at how we're forced to take in the migrants. We're forced to concede the country. We're forced to give away the culture. We're forced to take the jab. We're forced to be at the will of these people. That's not from God, because God always gives you a choice. That's why creation exists. God loves us. Love can only occur in an environment of free will. And it shows how sensitive this topic is. Even people who know you and know your heart and your values, speaking out against Israel can be the line that you've crossed, which is so dehumanizing because it shows that ideology, Zionism, is more important than personal relationships with people. That is sad. That is sad. I can still be friends with a Zionist and totally disagree and even have combative conversations and still go have a drink and have a dinner and wish their family well. That's what Orthodoxy is about. But notice the people that are entrenched essentially have a mental virus. The Zionism is a sort of mental virus. And notice once they've bought into that, it colors everything. You can see the tentacles of the evil one.
The Fed, the Federal Reserve. He was a religious Jew, Shomer Shabbat. Even though in public he didn't show his yarmulke, but he would walk to synagogue on Shabbat. And he made some brilliant moves with the interest, bringing it down, bailing out banks, forcing the big banks to buy the small banks.
Oh, yeah. It was great that he bailed out the banks, but not the individuals that were held captive due to the entire financial system. Yeah, individuals don't get bailed out, but the banks do. That's great. Maybe we should have let them fail. Maybe that would have made America better. It would have been difficult for a short time, but maybe we'd have had a better currency. Maybe we wouldn't be printing money. Maybe Trump would inflate the debt more than any other U.S. president in history by multiples. It's not even close. People were upset with Bush with the Iraq war. Trump has escalated that to multiple degrees.
Before the country will become a complete anarchy and chaos. People will kill each other here on the street. United States will become worse than Russia after USSR collapsed. And he saved this country, but they have zero gratitude. A religious Jew with his brilliance, this economist, Bernanke, Google it. You don't have to believe me. See the moves he made. You should teach it in schools. The country was on the point of all the banks will go bankrupt. You don't know what happened. I was in Wachovia Bank. It was a powerful bank. They went bankrupt. He forced Wells Fargo to buy them. He forced Chase to buy many banks. If not, you know how much money people would lose? And the FDIC was up to, I think, 50,000.
Okay, bro, you're not helping stereotypes when you care more about how much money people lose than the quality of life of people in the country. I don't think nobody feels the country's gotten better from 2008 forward. Nobody feels the country's gotten better from the 1990s forward. And all he's concerned is how much money people lose. You're not helping.
3,000 per account, that's it. People had millions in their account, life-saving. All of that will be wiped out. Big mortgage companies collapsed. This country in 2008 was in a disaster. And who saved the country? One brilliant religious Jew. Anybody appreciate it?
No, actually, I'm not a big fan of Bernanke at all. I think he actually has contributed massively to negative direction of this country.
No, nobody even speaks about it.
And why is it that all the heads of the Federal Reserve tend to be Jewish? How does that work out? I don't know. Okay, so some of you sports ball fans know that the NBA Finals is happening and that the New York Knicks are playing the San Antonio Spurs for the NBA championship, and that the biggest, one of the most expensive tickets in NBA history was to go to Madison Square Garden and watch the Knicks lose Game 3 to San Antonio and win Game 4 right at the end. Well, Jerry Seinfeld, the very, very wealthy comedian, had a front row courtside seat and was asked, I don't know if he was entering, I believe he's leaving the stadium after the game, to say Free Palestine, and he responds by saying Palestine doesn't exist.
Oh, Jerry Seinfeld. What up, Seinfeld? What up? Can we get a free Palestine? Can we get a free Palestine? Come on, give us one free Palestine.
It doesn't exist.
Outrageous. Outrageous. It doesn't exist? Palestine doesn't exist? It doesn't exist because of the genocide. It doesn't exist because of the bombing. I mean, again, these people are not helping themselves. Here's the latest Israeli attack against one of the last Christian villages in the West Bank. This is near Bethlehem. This is in the West Bank of Israel. It's a village called Taba. And Israeli settlers began burning it. The village has stood for thousands of years as one of the only Christian villages, a place where Jesus once walked, home of the oldest living Christian community in the world. Did you guys see Fox News talk about this? Did you guys see Newsmax, OAN talk about this? Of course you won't hear it from CNN or MSNBC or whatever Western news station, but even the conservative outlets won't even talk about how Israel is trying to destroy and attack the oldest living Christian village and community in the world. In the world. And you just pull up Taba, it'll say it right here. Taba is one of about a dozen majority Christian villages in the West Bank, all of which have strangely been targeted by Israeli settlers. Very strange. Very strange. Here's Israeli settler terrorists torch ancient Christian town of Taba in the West Bank. Church leaders have warned these escalating attacks threaten to end the ancient Christian presence in the Holy Land. As part of an escalating strategy of violence against native Palestinians, the Israeli-occupied West Bank, the Jewish terrorists from illegal Israeli settlements, have again attacked the ancient Christian town of Taba, setting its agricultural fields ablaze and seeking to burn down Christian homes, with reports of open fire upon the civilians as well. Backed by the IDF. I saw a video of IDF soldiers literally standing there watching the Israeli citizens do just that. This last fully Christian town in the West Bank has been the target of ongoing terror attacks due to the establishment of a new Israeli colony settlement nearby where these attacks are launched. Palestinian Christian and humanitarian rights activist Ahab Hassan has reported the Israeli terrorists are setting fields on fire, hurling Molotov cocktails at homes, and attempting to set the village gas station ablaze. Citing sources within the town itself, Hassan posted that the residents are terrified as fires are surrounding the village and settlers open fire on homes and civilians. He also reported that the Israeli army, which has a duty under international law to protect these civilians, has now raided the village and is firing stun grenades at the Christians. Taba, which is identified in the Gospel of John 11:54 as Ephraim, the place where Jesus Christ withdrew before his passion, has endured repeated Israeli settler terrorist attacks over the past year. In July of 2025, mass settlers on horseback grazed livestock on private lands, set fires near the 5th century church of St. George and the cemetery, destroyed the farmland, and terrorized the Christian residents. Local priests from the Greek Orthodox, Latin, and Melkite churches described an ongoing siege aimed at economic strangulation and displacement. Holy Land bishops, patriarchs, and heads of churches in Jerusalem condemned the climate of impunity, charged Israeli authorities with facilitating repeated Israeli settler terrorist attacks upon Christians and other Palestinians, and demanded international action and accountability from Israeli authorities. Following advocacy by Jason Jones, U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee visited Taba July 19, 2025, almost a year ago, denouncing the attacks as terror and demanding prosecution of perpetrators, yet attacks persisted unimpeded by Israeli authorities. Israeli officials corroborate condemned Jewish terror in the West Bank. These ongoing assaults, which have been sharply escalating since Israel's retaliatory genocidal war against the Gaza Strip began in October 2023, have elicited high-level condemnations of some Israeli authorities. In July of 2024, Prime Minister Ehud Olmert confirmed the assertion by the bishops above the present Israeli government has indeed supporting Jewish settler terrorist attacks against native Palestinians, including Christians, with the goal of ethnically cleansing the region of non-Jews. Even in Haaretz, Olmert said, "I am warning Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the day is drawing near when arrest warrants will be issued against you for the crimes being carried out every day in Judea and Samaria by Israel with the support of its government, while you intentionally turn a blind eye to it. Here, crimes are committed on a daily basis, not by soldiers and not against soldiers, but by rioters who are Israeli citizens, Arab haters, with the clear intention of expelling them from their homes in the villages where they have lived all their lives and for multiple generations." And then former defense minister, Jewish pogromists turning nation into Judeo-Nazis. More recently, in March, Israeli MK Mirav Cohen delivered a speech in the Knesset condemning the Jewish terror, which has been escalating in the West Bank, where villages are being attacked, communities are driven from their homes with premeditation, sheep are being slaughtered, orchards are being burned, and people are attacked for the mere fact of not being Jewish. Ms. Cohen further charged Israeli government officials with helping facilitate these crimes through obfuscation, encouragement, or ensuring the terrorists don't get arrested. All these people are responsible for this terror, no less than those terrorists from the hilltops. Additionally, in late January, Israeli former defense minister Moshe Yaalon condemned Jewish pogromists attacking Palestinians in the West Bank and lamenting that, quote, "not a single Jewish terrorist has been arrested," unquote, for committing these ongoing crimes. He warned that the ideology of Jewish supremacy has become dominant in the Israeli government and reminds one of Nazi racial theory, which, with the violence exercised against Palestinians, is turning into the nation of Judeo-Nazis. And I can't really disagree with it. I mean, I have more in regards to the outlandish attacks against Christians by Israel. Here's the next one. Israel dropping white phosphorus bombs on civilian areas in the village of Arnoun, Nabtea, and South Lebanon. These are internationally banned munitions. When white phosphorus hits your skin, there's really nothing you can do. And Israel is unleashing them against civilians. Look at that. You can see the white phosphorus streaking down. That is a civilian village. Those are Christians and Muslims there. White phosphorus is banned internationally. And Israel gets away with doing it against civilians at will with no repercussions. Israel has destroyed the historic Beaufort Castle. Fulk, the king of Jerusalem, built it for the Crusaders. This is a piece of UNESCO history. It's a historical site. And what do we see? We see Israel literally destroying it because they must wipe out any remnant of Christian civilization in the Holy Land. Any remnant, including the people, including the churches, including the cemeteries. They destroy Christian cemeteries. Of course, here then, Benjamin Netanyahu goes full psycho mode and tells the people of Lebanon to immediately surrender and join Israel or face destruction. So he's now threatening, for example, they've been bombing Beirut. What does Beirut have to do with the war with Iran? Well, they say, well, you know, Hezbollah is in Lebanon. And we're fighting Hezbollah. So you bomb civilian centers in Beirut? Beirut is a majority Christian city. It's one of the only Christian cities in the Middle East. Lebanon used to be a Christian nation. They don't even have that anymore. And Trump, as we'll get to, supposedly told Netanyahu he's effing crazy. You're making everybody hate Israel, and you're making people in turn hate Donald Trump, which is a fact. Donald Trump doesn't change anything. Donald Trump is so weak he can't even stop. He claims he's threatened. The rumor is he claimed that he told Netanyahu that the U.S. will have to stop them if they don't stop bombing Lebanon. Give me a break. I dream of the day I see that. It's not going to happen. But here's Netanyahu in English telling the people of Lebanon, you better support Israel or we consider you a combatant. That we may just kill you as well, essentially.
Israel is not at war with you. We're at war with Hezbollah, that has taken your country hostage, that does Iran's bidding, that uses your territory to launch terrorist attacks against Israel. Do you remember what Lebanon was like before Iran and Hezbollah turned it into a nightmare? Remember the cafes? Remember the culture? Remember the calm? All that's gone because Hezbollah and Iran want to drag us into war over and over and over again. You deserve better. Your children deserve better. You know by now that Israel will do whatever it takes to protect our families, our communities. Hezbollah is weaker than ever. Israel is stronger than ever. We've taken out nearly 10,000 Hezbollah terrorists so far. We're systematically clearing out South Lebanon of these fanatics. No matter where they are, we'll find them. You also know we yearn for peace with you, with Lebanon. A peace where our two peoples can invest together, build together, thrive together. The only impediment, the only obstacle to this beautiful vision is Hezbollah. They want war, not peace. They want death, not life. They will sacrifice as many of you as possible to achieve their sick aims. Don't let your future be dictated by medieval theocrats hell-bent on destroying our common civilization.
Can you believe that? Our common civilization? What common civilization? What common civilization? You're talking about Israel doing whatever it wants in the Middle East? You're talking about, again, the situation in Lebanon is dire because their political leaders are totally bought and paid for by the U.S. and Israel. That's why the Lebanese, even the Christian, Hezbollah has a murky track record. There's a lot of Christians, there's a lot of Lebanese that don't like Hezbollah. But here's the thing, they're the only one resisting against Israel because the political establishment will not do it. They are in bed with Israel and the U.S. So if you're Lebanese, your only hope that your village in South Lebanon, if you're south of Litani, Israel's already destroyed it. Your only hope is that Hezbollah puts up enough resistance along with Iran who seem to be the only two Muslim groups defending the genocide of Palestine, because that's one of the big things that's come out recently with all this talk negotiation. Trump every day says they're about to sign a deal. They're about to sign a deal. Iran says, no, we haven't even talked with the U.S. in weeks. I don't know what he's talking about. And Trump's able to fluctuate the stock market. But Iran, one of the things they have done is tie their peace negotiations with the U.S. to the genocide of the Palestinians. And that's why Netanyahu has two reasons why he will never subscribe to that. One is if he ever has an era of peace, one, he's not going to be prime minister anymore, and he's going to be charged for all his crimes. So he must exist in a continual place of warfare. Second, he's never going to stop the expansion of Israel. So the whole pretext for southern Lebanon and fighting, this is about greater Israel. The genocide of the millions of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, this is about the expansion of Israel. This is about total genocide. These people are absolutely evil. Netanyahu is one of the most evil people in the world. And there's no accountability. There is no justice for the crimes they commit.
God's peace with you. Seize your future. Join Israel. Build safety and prosperity for all of our children. And once Hezbollah is dismantled, the possibilities are endless and they are sky high.
Yeah, it's once Hezbollah is gone, the possibility of Israel taking more of Lebanon is endless, and the construction of their Jewish state will be sky high. That's really what he's saying. Next, here is one of the most brutal scenes in human history has been leaked. The moment the tents of displaced people were bombed in the southern Gaza Strip, in the Mawasi area of Khan Yunis, killing more than 500 civilians in tents. In tents. These are Gazans that were living in tents because their homes and their buildings and their civilization was destroyed, but refusing to leave. And Israel bombed civilians in tents, killing over 500 people. Did you hear about that? Did that make mainstream news? And here is, again, Trump confirming that he called Netanyahu effing crazy. Now, what's connected to that, as Syrian Girl highlights here, that must mean everyone hates Israel, because according to the report, we heard that there was leaked by someone in the Trump administration that Trump got really irate with Israel because one way or another, he believed that they were no longer going to attack Lebanon. Of course, they continue. And Trump's approval rating's the lowest it's ever been, right? His support's the lowest it's ever been. I mean, he was literally on camera talking about how he thinks inflation is good the other day. That was 2 days ago. So Trump apparently on a phone call told Netanyahu he's effing crazy. He's got to stop killing. He's got to stop his attacks on Lebanon, and that everybody hates Israel, and therefore people are beginning to hate Trump, and they have to stop. And this was, when that was brought up to Trump, this was his response.
You were angry with him. You said, are you effing crazy? What are you effing doing? I helped you stay out of jail. Is that true? Did you speak to him in those terms?
I did. I wouldn't say angry. I was a little bit perturbed at his constantly fighting with Lebanon. You know, at some point I said, we got to stop this. We got to stop it. But I have a very good relationship. We've done well together. He always says we could never have done it, but everybody knows that we could have never done it without the United States. But I've worked very well together. I like Bibi a lot, and I've worked very well with him. We had I'm a wartime president. He's a wartime prime minister. Very important part of the world.
Bro, you wouldn't be a wartime president if you didn't choose to go to war with Iran on behalf of Israel. Like, what are you talking about? You could have chose not to be a wartime president. You would have been the first president to serve 2 terms and not the U.S. not being in a war. But he couldn't do that. Whether it's blackmail, whether he owes Israel something, who knows where, Miriam Adelson's money, all the strings attached. We know it's tied to Zionism. Like, the guy's not free. He's not a free president. And let's just face it, this second term has been a failure. And that's not to say the Democrats are better. I'm just saying, whether you get left or right, it does not matter at this point. That's the most obvious thing. All you get is Israel. Whether you get Joe Biden, you get Israel. You get Donald Trump, you get Israel. Barack Obama, you get Israel. George Bush, you get Israel. It doesn't matter.
And I think we've done very well. We've gotten along very well together.
What you are angry with?
Yeah, I'm sure you get along. You do everything he asked. And then you get upset because it's causing you reputational damage. And meanwhile, while all this is going on, the Pentagon elevates the security threat of Israel to a highest degree. So, bombshell, the Pentagon just raised Israel's counterintelligence threat level to critical, the highest possible designation, over concerns Israel is aggressively spying on top U.S. officials. Well, obviously, they were behind the Epstein. That is literally the reputation of Mossad, is that they're the greatest espionage intelligence agency in the world. That is their reputation. According to U.S. officials, the Defense Intelligence Agency issued the assessment in recent weeks because Israel is making, quote, a particular effort to surveil top U.S. officials to get information on the Trump administration's internal deliberations and decision-making on Iran and Lebanon. Read that again. America's closest ally is now rated a critical counterintelligence threat. And so while all that is happening, while we elevate the threat of Israel to a critical level, we have this. We have Mike Rogers, Republican from Alabama, and Adam Smith, Democrat for Washington. Like I said, it does not matter. Look at the AIPAC funding of everyone in Congress and the Senate. It's 90%. 90%. It's actually above 90%, but just use a clean number. 90% are all paid by AIPAC. And Republican Democrat have introduced the United States Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative as part of the 2027 National Defense Authorization Act. The initiative would expand U.S. and Israel military cooperation with joint research, testing, manufacturing, and sharing technology, as well as promoting joint military training, information sharing, network integration, and data fusion. So you want to get away from Israel? How about they control your military? That's what we'll give you instead. And then the United States, this was 2 days ago, the House passes Section 224 to integrate the U.S. and Israeli militaries. It passed the House. It passed the House committee. Can you believe that? Can you guys actually believe that? On the same week, the Pentagon raises the counterintelligence threat level of Israel due to espionage to a critical assessment. U.S. congressmen are then trying to fuse our militaries. I mean, it's totally Twilight Zone. And then if that wasn't enough, then you have the Zionist Tom Cotton as chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So we're talking about the House, now we're talking about the Senate, has advanced a provision in the FY 2027 Intelligence Authorization Act that would require the President of the United States to expand and enhance intelligence sharing with the government of Israel across a broad list of subjects. The provision would also bar the president from suspending or materially limiting that intelligence sharing except on the basis of a specific and identifiable national security concern determined by the president. So he doesn't just want Israel to have access to all of our intelligence and classified documents. He wants the president to not even be able to prevent them from getting access to our intelligence. That's where we're at right now, guys. That's how you know this is being forced on us, because the The last survey I saw on CNN was like 73% of America had a neutral or negative opinion of Israel. Meaning only 20-some% of Americans actually have a positive opinion of Israel. Neutral or negative. It was like 73%. And then here, Netanyahu brags he wrote Section 224. He bragged that's what got passed, Section 224. Here, Netanyahu brags that he wrote it. Here, I'll pause it. This is what Netanyahu said in his letter as prime minister. He said, "I'm heartened by your enthusiastic support for our plan to develop a new memorandum of understanding with the United States government that will draw down U.S. financial military assistance over the next decade and replace it with what you refer to as, quote, a new framework for joint defense cooperation, co-development, co-production, and mutual investment in areas including advanced missile defense, artificial intelligence, unmanned systems, cybersecurity, and next-generation military platforms." Check this out.
The palace coup is a takeover. Yeah, there's a letter that Netanyahu sent to the committee member that put it in the bill saying thank you for putting the legislation and that I wrote word for word in the legislation. Unbelievable. So here he is writing to the congressman. "Dear Congressman, I was glad to receive your proposed congressional resolution endorsing my plan to ship the framework for U.S.-Israel defense cooperation from aid to partnership. As I said in our meeting in Jerusalem on May 27, 2026, Israel deeply appreciates the financial component of the military aid the United States has generously provided us over the years, it's over $200 billion. The time has now arrived for us to move forward from aid recipient to partner. Partner. Well, I mean, I'm an American citizen. I thought this is my government. It's like you're married to something and then, we're going to bring another partner here. So now we're swingers. I am heartened by your enthusiastic support for my plan and for our plan to develop a new memorandum of understanding with the United States government that will draw down U.S. financial military assistance over the next decade and replace it with what you referred to as the new framework of joint defense operations, co-development, co-production, and mutual investment in areas including advanced missile defense, artificial intelligence, unmanned systems, cybersecurity, and next-generation military platforms. I also appreciate your commitment to fighting the scourge of anti-Semitism in the United States and around the world."
American people are tired of the arrogance and insolence of Prime Minister Netanyahu telling America what we should do. The entire country of Israel has a GDP that is less than a single town in my district. Yet somehow Netanyahu thinks he can tell the American people what we should do. The person who's most upset with him right now is President Donald Trump. And everyone in America, whether you're a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat, says that we need to tell Netanyahu that America calls the shots, not the prime minister of any other country. They want less cooperation and blank checks to Israel, not more. Only the United States Congress would dream up at this moment, let's actually do more for Israel, not less. And that's what Section 2024 does. It's a pretty simple thing. Should we do more for Israel than we already do, or should we do less? If you think we should do more for Israel, you should be against my amendment. If you think we should do less for Israel at the time that he's arrogantly telling Donald Trump what to do, then you should be for my amendment. Now, let me just be clear. Mr. Netanyahu actually wrote to a member of Congress to put this Section 224 into the bill.
This situation with Israel and Section 224 in the National Defense Authorization Act of 2027, they're getting ready to pass the next few months, is unbelievable. As it takes some time to hit this, so we're going to break in 6 minutes. I'm going to hit it after the break. And guys, go ahead and pull up Section 224 again. I know I had it in my stack, but I moved it off. And it is amazing because we now know, because he sent letters to the members of Congress from the Armed Services Committee that put it in the bill, the main defense, or now Department of War funding bill, was written by Netanyahu. So now you have a foreign government writing the legislation that when you read the 5 pages of Section 224, no one can read that and not come away with it's Israel taking over and getting access to everything.
Yep.
And then saying they own all our weapons and making trillions of dollars. I mean, it is a coup. It is a palace coup. It is a takeover. Yeah, there's a letter that Netanyahu sent to the committee member that put it in the bill saying thank you for putting the legislation that I wrote word for word in the legislation. Unbelievable. And now we have it being talked about in congressional hearings. So this is just wild. That's coming up. Iran.
So we'll stop it there. We're not going to watch the whole segment, but this is real, guys. This is not some like, oh, I can't believe Netanyahu, he stated outward that maybe we should fuse. No. This has already passed the House committee, guys. You think the Senate's going to stop it? Give me a break. I wouldn't be surprised if it passes the House. I wouldn't be surprised if multiple Democrats vote for it. This is Israel. This is not a domestic issue. This is not a polarized issue between left and right. This is Israel, the one topic that unites both of our political parties. And then here, if you didn't see either, there was an Apache helicopter that was shot down. Trump was talking about it. This was like 3 days ago over the Strait of Hormuz. Now, it just so happened to coincide on the anniversary of USS Liberty. You know, that time in which Israel deliberately attacked a U.S. ship and then prevented them to be saved. And then the U.S. president, I think it was Lyndon Johnson, prevented them to speak about it. That the U.S. military threatened the survivors of the U.S. Liberty with prison if they were ever to bring up the fact that Israel attacked them. So that U.S. Liberty, on the anniversary of the USS Liberty, we were told a U.S. Apache helicopter was attacked by Iran, but both pilots were safe. Now, here's the thing that's very interesting. Throughout this war, Iran has not shied away from stating what it is that they did. When they bombed parts of Israel, they said that was us. When they bombed the Gulf nations, they said that was us. When they bombed U.S. military base, they said that was us. But they never took credit for taking down an Apache helicopter, which has led many people to speculate this sounds more like a false flag. There was even like an Iranian investigation into it. It's still, the IRGC has never stated that they shot down this Apache helicopter. Here's what Alex Jones, who has really come around on the Israeli issue, has to say.
I was saying yesterday, I wonder if Israel will do a false flag on the anniversary. Well, Iran is not taking credit. An Apache helicopter of the Strait of Hormuz got shot down. The pilots were saved. This is just now breaking. Trump says U.S. must respond. Shoots down helicopter over Strait of Hormuz. Iran we can't find a statement yet. It's not taken credit for it. So Israel every time has gone in and hit Lebanon, hit other areas, hit Iran. Every time there's a peace deal, Trump said, don't do it again. And then is Trump going to just buy this? Why would the Iranians, now I know their forces are compartmentalized, and so I'm not going to say some Iranian with a missile might not have taken a pot shot at the Apache, but this has to be investigated as a potential false flag because of the timing. Victor Boot.
Absolutely, but we know that investigation would never happen. And even if it was found to be a false flag, you know that we're never going to hear about it. It's just going to be covered up. And here is some of the U.S. Liberty survivors dropping a massive bombshell, confirming that they were threatened with prison or worse if they ever were to speak about the Israeli attack against them. That is a fact. This is not conspiracy theory. This is historical fact. Here's the survivors speaking.
I got a quick question for obviously the survivors here. What does it mean to have your story told at the Capitol? How long have you waited for this?
59 years. We've been lobbying Congress for 59 years, but no member of Congress will give us the dime a day.
Why do you think that is?
I have no idea.
Israel owns us.
Rob.
Hold the microphone up. Hold the microphone up.
The crew was ordered to secrecy, not to talk to anybody, their wives, even each other. We were not. They weren't allowed to talk. I was injured seriously at the beginning, so I didn't get Admiral Kidd's thing. But he told them, if you talk to anybody, you can plan on spending the rest of your life in the brig or worse. He threatened them with that order. And luckily for us, the admiral that did the commissioned officers only said till the day he died, and 15 years later he died, and then restarted fire talk.
Now, why would the U.S. government and a Navy admiral prevent the U.S. public from knowing that Israel was firing upon our own naval ships, knowing that they were U.S.? Huh. And did you guys see the latest about UFC 25? UFC, US 250 celebration, the UFC fight. UFC Freedom 250 is what it's called. So you guys know the American, I think he's the welterweight champion right now, Sean Strickland. You know, very like pro-America, kind of rough around the edges kind of guy. Well, he was supposed to attend this event. He was banned by the Trump administration because of comments he made about Israel. Yes, a UFC professional fighter known as pro-MAGA, known as a defender of Donald Trump. You have all these photos after he wins where he'll hold his fist up and Trump will be behind him. He was banned by, specifically, Trump himself for comments he made about Israel. Now, not only that, which is absolutely ridiculous and shows you the level of censorship around this event, but we're being told, according to Ariel Helwani, the Jewish commentator on MMA fighting and boxing, according to him, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will attend UFC Freedom 250 on June 14th. Netanyahu is expected to wrap the belt around the winner of the main event, followed up with a speech honoring the U.S.-Israel alliance to close out the show. Can you believe that? We can't even have a celebration of America without Israel, without Netanyahu there. That is absolutely insane. That is absolutely insane. That is where we are. We cannot even have a 250 birthday celebration of the nation without the Prime Minister of Israel coming here, inserting himself into the main event to give them the title, and then provide a speech on how U.S.-Israel alliance is necessary or part of American identity. This is only going to backfire on them. It's like the best thing Israel could do right now is just stop the fighting and retreat from the public sphere. Allow other news stories to take people's attention. The cultural conversation turn to a different topic. That would be a smart way. But instead, they can't help themselves. They can't state, just like the rabbi here, they can't talk about how they run the world, how they're racially superior. They can't help but destroy Christian villages. They can't help but threaten the Lebanese that you better join Israel or you're with Hezbollah. And they have to then come to America and convince us on the national birthday that we must support Israel? What is going on? It's like they do everything to irritate people even further. And so, God, I hope that isn't the case, because I planned on watching UFC Freedom 250. There's some good bouts. I'm anxious to see the fights. I love watching the UFC. But it was one of the places that was still like masculine, and to see it being co-opted by the Zionists is just so irritating. And then my last little news clip. This is, what's going on with Trump? I don't know, there's a rumor that he's having like frontal lobe dementia. I don't know if that's the case. I'm not even going to say that's the case. I've seen recent interviews. He still seems pretty sharp for his age. Clearly, he's beholden to Israel. Clearly, he's not a free man. Clearly, he's also upset with his alliance with Netanyahu because it's absolutely draining his support domestically. But then the newest numbers on inflation and the economy come out, and he thinks the inflation is a good thing? What? At no point is inflation a good thing. And somehow inflation's good because then he says we're stealing millions of barrels of oil from Iran, but Iran doesn't know until right now. Well, dude, it doesn't make any sense. If we're going to even do military campaigns, like we're going to blow up Iran again, we're going to start. Why would you even say it out loud? Why would you, if you're stealing barrels of oil and somehow this is offsetting the deficit or the inflation that's coming, why would you then brag about it publicly? It makes no sense whatsoever. So this was Trump just a couple days ago. This is from the 10th, 2 days ago, when the numbers came out.
The right people come into our country. I will. I will.
Are you concerned, Mr. President, about the latest inflation number which came out this morning? Could that be a
No, I love it. The numbers were great. You know what I really love? I love the inflation. You know why? Because as soon as this war is over, you know, I can say it now. Something you didn't know. Do you know we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil? Nobody knows it. You know who doesn't know about it? Iran, until right now.
So if you were doing that, why would you state it publicly? Then why wouldn't you just keep doing that? That makes no sense. And how does that relate to the fact that inflation went up, that the economic numbers in the U.S. are not as good as he was expecting? How are these things related? I don't understand.
We took out the other night 22 ships. Late at night with no lights, because they don't have any radar, because we blasted the crap out of it. We took out, that's why oil's $85 a barrel. I mean, you take a look. Remember when I did this, I said, look, the one bad thing will be, we hit the best economy we've ever hit. And I said to my people, I had Scott.
It wasn't the best economy for the average person. It was a really good economy if you're invested in the stock market. It's a really good economy if, you know, you have a big 401k. If you're a millennial or a Gen Z or even a Gen Xer and you're trying to get by or you're trying to save up some money or have some type of wealth, it's not a great economy. It's very difficult. You have to essentially outpace inflation and the cost of living through income in some type of dramatic way. Not everybody has that privilege. Everyone I know is like in a tough position financially right now. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people I know. I should put it that way. A lot of people I know. I'm sure people here in the chat. It's not like, what are you talking about? The greatest economy ever. I didn't notice it the last 2 years. Did you guys?
Howard, I had Pete, I had all of them. I had Todd in the room. I said, the one thing we have to do now, we had just hit the highest stock market in history, highest 401ks in history. Everything was going well. And I said, I hate to do this to you guys, but Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon very soon. We have to go in.
That's great you said that, but our entire intelligence agency said they were at the earliest 15 years away. 15 years away. General consensus was like 20 to 30 years away from an actual nuclear weapon, especially one that had ballistic capabilities to reach the United States. Not going to happen. Not even close. Netanyahu's been talking about this since the late 80s. You're the only president that was willing to actually go through with his dumb plan. What are you talking about? Nuclear weapons. That's not the most important thing in the world. Israel is not the most important topic in the world. Israel is not the priority of the United States. But that's where we are. That's where we are. And that, you know, I know I didn't cover tons of topics today. We hit some of the big ones that people are talking about, but the Israeli stuff is just absolutely out of control. The fact that they are wanting to fuse the IDF and the U.S. military, that has passed the House committee, that it's now in deliberation amongst the entire Congress, that Tom Cotton is trying to insert things from the Senate to prevent the U.S. president from withholding intelligence from Israel, the fact that they continue to attack Christians, not just Palestinians, but explicitly Christian majority places like Taiba, the last and the oldest living Christian community in the world. That's where we're at right now. So that's going to conclude our news stream today. Let me catch up with you guys in the chat and see what you guys had to say. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. If Netanyahu goes to UFC 250, Freedom 250, I'm going to be horrified. That is the worst PR campaign he could ever do. Especially now that we know that Sean Strickland was actually banned from attending. Big Nifty Dude throws in 5, says, Lutheran here, your content is super important to me for so much. God bless you, brother, and keep shining light on things. Well, thank you so much, Big Nifty Dude. Really appreciate the support. And major shout out to Mr. Fista, because he sent in a bunch of super chats helping me reach my goal earlier. Sends in 10, 20, 30. Says, I finally got your book, doctor. Haven't read it yet. Got a pile to get through, but I'm so confident I gave it 5 stars on Amazon already. Well, thank you, brother. Thank you. I was able to sell a few books at Montanica and was really appreciative of how many people had already read it. And just really thankful for the positive feedback I've been getting on my book. That took me 2.5 years to write. And if you have not gotten the book yet, go sign up on my website. If you want an author signed copy, I'll ship them out this week. Or if you want to get a cheaper version, do what Mr. Fist did and go to Amazon. It's a little bit cheaper than getting a signed copy because I have to pay for the shipping myself. I don't have the logistics of Amazon, unfortunately. But Mr. Fist, thank you so much, bro. And then he threw in a 20 to reach the goal. Really appreciate you, man. God bless you. And then Austin DeTulio, a friend of the program, throws in 10, says, just tuning in. Hope you had a wonderful trip to Montanica. Yes, we had a great, great time. I opened the live stream by kind of recounting a little bit of Jenny and I's trip. It was really an adventure. As I told you guys, I did not book any hotel rooms. We got a rental car, and then every day we had no idea where we were going to stop, but we just drove and saw whatever we wanted to see. It was fantastic. Highly recommend anybody else doing that. If you have time, drive through the mountains. The Rockies, just explore. Just drive. Do whatever you want to do. It's fantastic. Rock Shepherd throws in 5, says, I think we are living during Satan's little season of Revelation 20, 7 through 9. I mean, for me as Orthodox, I'm not so concerned. For me, you guys have seen my eschatological streams. I mean, in a way, yes, we are living at a time in which Satan has more reign and control than he's ever had before. No doubt about that. The Great World War is, in a sense, a opportunity for us. It's a sort of a reset. Not in the reset of the WEF, but a reset in the sense of global power, domestic issues. The U.S., according to the prophecies, we've talked about the Civil War. Look at what we just covered with the Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf situation. Are you serious? We are ripe for racial tensions. Look at the protests regarding the illegals and ICE. We are ripe for a situation in this country for civil war. We're ripe for a financial collapse. Look at the U.S. dollar right now. We're ripe for military failure. Look at the U.S. military right now. So, yeah, in that sense, things aren't looking good. But, the Antichrist is much further down the timeline. We're Orthodox, so we don't believe all this stuff is smashed together and the Antichrist is going to emerge any moment now. It's a longer eschatological timeline than that, but it's certainly not in a good place. And Rock followed up with, God divorced Israel in 70 AD. Indeed, he did. The Bible does not speak of a third temple. Well, it's not going to stop them from trying to build it. But, yeah, the promise that God gave to the Jews and the Israelites, that's fulfilled in the Orthodox Church. What they're doing, and I'm not saying God doesn't protect Jews and Israelis. Of course he does. Their providence is unfolding just like ours is. But as a nation, Israel as a nation, look at what they're doing. I don't know how anyone with eyes cleansed by the Orthodox Church can look at Israel and think, yeah, they're the good guys. They're on the right side of history. I mean, I do not like Islam. I have Muslims that I like, but Islam as an ideology and a religious system, I'm not a fan of. And it's sad to see that, strangely, ironically, that somehow Iran is standing up for something that I wish the U.S. government would stand up for, stopping Israeli genocide, stopping Israeli settlement expansion, stopping Israeli persecution of Christians, stopping Israeli telling Christians they can't even go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre during Holy Week. Anyways, thank you, Rock, for the support, man. I appreciate it. Blink throws in 10, no comment. Thank you very much, Blink. Throws in another 5 and says, Zionists truly are the successors of the Bolsheviks. Well, ironically, it seems like they're the successors of both the Bolsheviks and the Nazis. You know, the Bolsheviks pushed forth a centralized government of collective identity, anti-religion. And the Nazis put forth a racial superiority and really a sort of semi-occultic understanding of the world. All of that seems to be part of modern-day Israel and Zionism. I mean, how many videos have we talked about rabbis talking about Kabbalah, rabbis talking about racial supremacy as we saw today, literally explicit, that they deserve to run our money, they deserve to run your civilization, because you're too dumb as a goyim to even, as a goy, but plural, the goyim, to even know how to run civilization, that we, in our low IQ hatred, attack the Jew, but in fact, we should be thankful because they give us civilization. It's like Zionism is the perfect mixture of the Bolsheviks and the Nazis together. Blink throws another 5, says, we're slaves because we don't have the spirit of the Albanians. Well, we need to. We're going to have to get it. Just like the Irish. It's clear. We're not voting our way out of this. We're not, voting for MAGA is only digging the hole deeper. Now, I'm not telling you to vote Democrat. I don't even know what to tell you in regards to vote. I mean, I still think voting for your local sheriff is important, your local government. But the big takeaway, and even though Trump has been good on like the border and stuff like that, we got to call a spade a spade. What does it matter that the border's shut if our government is controlled by a foreign nation? What does it matter? It's not, and this isn't just, Jew-spurging, which is a problem. It is a problem. I remember I covered a clip of Nick Fuentes. This was like a month or 2 months ago, talking about the problem of people like Jake Shields, former UFC fighter, not that intelligent. That everything is a Jewish conspiracy. It's not. Not everything is some Jewish conspiracy. You guys, we have to be respectable in our critiques. We need to actually have points that can be upheld. But my gosh, when is this stuff going to end? They're not helping themselves at all. That's for sure. Jew-spurging can be a problem, but at the same time, if Trump has given our government over and the entire Trump administration is led by Zionists, that seems like a massive, massive problem we can't overlook due to a minor tax bill or him finally shutting the southern border. Those things should already be done. They should already be done. It's like we're giving him credit for something that should have already been the case. Yes, I'm aware of the DNC. I'm aware of the open border agenda. I'm aware of all this stuff. But is he doing mass deportations? I haven't seen them. Orb Maxer throws in 10, says, I support the stream. Well, thank you very much, Orb Maxer. And DC Heat throws in 20. Thank you very much, DC Heat. He says, man, the first hour of this stream was edifying and inspiring to hear as a young catechumen. It seems like your trip gave you a quickening of grace. Well, thank you very much, DC Heat. I appreciate that. It was a great trip. And I highly recommend, if you're a catechumen or an inquirer, but especially if you're a catechumen or you're already Orthodox, it's important to go to some of these events. It's important to meet other Orthodox Christians. It's important to talk with clergy. You know, I think so often, especially when you're young in your faith as Orthodox, it's so easy to be intimidated by talking with clergy, especially if you're struggling with something, because you feel like, oh, they're so much holier than me. Or talk with clergy. Go to conferences. Make sure you belong to an Orthodox community. That's the biggest thing I'm seeing as a problem with people that are constantly debating online. I like to call them the drama merchants. You know, we need less drama merchants. Less drama merchants. That's not good for your health. It's not good for your soul. It's not good for your spiritual development. And really, these streams right here, this Logos News series, this is about as much as I do in regards to drama merchant content. And really, I'm just commenting on news that I think is important for everyone to hear and be aware of. But, you know, being a drama merchant is not going to help you advance. And really, what's the point of all this stuff? Is it to win? You know, the question is, what is the goal to win? What are we trying to win? I want to win salvation for my wife and my family, and I hope, God willing, I can help anybody watching a stream that I create go to an Orthodox church. That's what it's all about. Go to church. Go to church. The grace is in the church. The grace is in the institution of the church. The grace is in the sacraments. There is no grace watching YouTube videos. YouTube videos should only supplement and help the continuation of your progress in the church. So anyways, let me just double check, make sure I didn't miss anything here. And it doesn't look like it. So anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap up today's stream. A major thank you to you all. Please smash that like. Oh, DC Heat just said amen. Well, thank you, brother. Thank you. I appreciate your support, man. Exactly. Sam is spot on here. It doesn't matter what we say, it matters what we do, right? Even if you bring a lot of people into the church, if you don't live the life, I mean, that's going to be held against you on Judgment Day. And that's the whole point about my speech at Montanica, talking about how creation is a true lens to reality. Is like death is inevitable. Whether you're the pronghorn baby antler, about said deer again, as I was rightly corrected after my speech, and the coyotes, like that's why so many people watching it, they are never confronted with death. How often do you think the average person reflects on their own death? Probably not a whole lot. But that's what we're called to as Orthodox. That's why we repent. I mean, honestly, you can't even see reality clearly if you can't see yourself clearly. That's what the whole point of confession is about. By repenting our sins and confessing to a Father, that's exactly how you begin to see yourself more clearly and therefore see the world more clearly. So that's what it's about. Anyways, I love you guys. It's so good to be back. I'm going to be doing another stream either tomorrow or Sunday on Marshall McLuhan. Marshall McLuhan, the famous media theorist that very few people are actually aware of. I brought him up a little bit in my speech. So we're going to dive into his media theories and talk a little bit about that. And again, guys, if you have a sponsored stream topic, please sponsor a stream. I don't even have any. So I'm going to kind of be doing a few of the topics I've been wanting to do, like Marshall McLuhan, for a while. But if you have a stream topic, if you would like to sponsor a stream, there is a topic you'd be interested in, I can get to work on it like next week because I have no sponsored streams lined up. It's the first time in a while, actually. I got caught up right before we left. So use that link. Also, guys, I forgot to mention, we're going to be beginning a new educational series at the Logos Academy. We're going to be reading through the book of Enoch. How many of you have read the book of Enoch? So we're going to be reading all the books of Enoch. That includes what? The Watchers, the Parables, Kingdom of Heaven, the book of Noah, and there's one more I'm missing. anyways, we're going to be in the Logos Academy. So if you're a man and you'd be interested, please join us. Over at the Logos Academy, we're going to be reading the entirety of the book of Noah from an Orthodox perspective. So the Orthodox actually has an interesting place for the book of Enoch. So we're going to be addressing what the book is, how it stands within the Orthodox tradition, and then we're going to read through the whole thing. So if you have never read the book of Enoch, I highly recommend you joining our group. And then later this year, we're going to be doing a full deep dive, like a graduate level discussion on orthodoxy for probably the rest of the year. So that was what was voted for by the group. So we're going to be starting the book of Enoch. If you guys have never read it, join us over at the Logos Academy. We'd love to have you. This coming Tuesday will be a general discussion on politics, world events, stuff like that. So I'm going to be promoting it for the next week or so. But if you've never read the book of Enoch or you'd like to read it again with a group of like-minded men, join us over at the Logos Academy. We'd love to have you. So anyways, with that being said, guys, I will see you in the next one. Thank you for all the support. God bless you all. I truly love you guys. And as always, until then, God bless.